Welcome to the world of tomorrow. You are about to take a journey out of this world into the world of the future.
The atomic age was born.
The world of tomorrow became the world of today, bringing together all people in a new era of understanding.
Good sense requires that all of us prepare for any eventuality.
Imagine, if you can, an electronic brain operating at millionths of a second speed.
Electrical pulses transmitted with the speed of light.
Limitless power at man's command. On man's wisdom, on his firmness in the use of that power, depends now the future of his children and his children's children. But wisdom demands, too, that we take time to understand this force.
Combat Information Center is alert. Its radars probing the darkness, ready to give early warning of any unseen enemy.
But have no fear, we are monitoring the situation.
It's and we're rolling.
Oh dear. Well, we decided this evening that we should throw some scheisse on the wall.
And pummel it with bullets.
With bullets, meat bullets, of course.
Meat bullets.
And see what happens. You know, that's what happens when you have scheisse on the wall.
You know what's funny is when I was in Austria in college, and you couldn't go anywhere and get like normal water. Everything was sparkling water, right?
Oh God, yes, I remember.
And the American palate is not accustomed to that.
No.
You know, and it's an acquired taste. I like it now, but at the time, you know, in Austria or Germany, people would be like, you know, they'd give you water and they'd say meat gas, and I would say no, meat out gas.
Meat out. Yeah, I really had to get used to drink because, you know, like for me, water was always like a thirst quencher, right? You know, like you're walking around, you're hot, you're like, oh, let me guzzle a little water, and it's just a guzzle, you know.
Did Europeans not drink out of hoses or anything? Like,
I guess not,
or out of taps. I mean, and the thing is, the water at the Kartauza in Austria is the best water I've ever tasted.
Right,
it's alpine water. The stuff coming out of the tap is
from
better
the
than
glacier.
Straight from the glacier. But it's better than any bottled Fiji or anything I've ever had. Because it was so rich in calcium, it was almost like creamy. It was
creamy.
It was a killer
creamy.
when you had to clean your shower door, though, because they had the glass shower doors and would leave the residue all over it. But it tasted good. Anyway, what are we here to talk about today?
Well, we have stuff. To continue the World Cup thing, I've been following the World Cup and enjoying the games and all that. We've got another game to go, but anyway.
So you're not going back in the closet?
Absolutely not. I am full steam ahead. As a matter of fact, I'm even thinking of becoming like a soccer follower. I mean, I know I have to call it football or whatever, but man, I'm really digging me some soccer. I have
to set boundaries in our friendship, Kale.
Well, you know, I look, we can't agree on everything, Mr. Skojic. And that's not true. We don't agree on lots of things, but
well, you are as evil as it gets. So
well, man, yeah. So I guess we could talk about that. I kicked a hornet's nest today because I had the temerity to talk about Candace Owens. And, you know,
in a less than glowing fashion.
Right. I did not. I really was trying to call balls and strikes, and I wasn't even getting into the long list of crazy things that she says.
I think you explicitly omitted all of that.
Right. I mean, I really wasn't trying to get into that because, look, just like go on X and type in Candace Owens lies, and you'll get like 50,000 mashups of things where she says something on Tuesday and then on Wednesday she says the opposite, says something on Wednesday and then on Thursday she says the opposite. And at any rate, I have really held my tongue on this whole Owens issue, but in the aftermath of the hearing for the guy who shot Charlie Kirk, it was just so obvious that all of these crazy things that she's been spouting for quite a bit are just completely unhinged. I mean, like truly just completely unhinged. And so I felt I was in kind of safe waters that I could go in and I am not interested in what she says, but I am very much interested in the phenomena that that she has become. And the again, not so much the specifics of her conspiracy thinking and all of that. Because look, you and I, like, it's not like as soon as the word conspiracy gets thrown up, we're like, oh, that's bullcrap. I mean, I think we're pretty open to thinking through dark possibilities. And we've been talking about MK Ultra. We've been talking about all these kinds of things. But I do have an allergy to, explaining every bad thing that happens by the invocation of the state of Israel, Mossad, the Jews, all these kinds of things, because it's so low resolution that it just kind of just sets me off. And again, I am capable of saying, when a Jewish person does something bad, like, I can talk about those things, but this sort of it's like remember those like secret decoder rings you could get in the box of Fruit Loops? It's like when your secret decoder ring only comes up the Jews, the Jews, the Jews.
Right.
Maybe there's a problem with your sense-making
bet
frame.
we could make a magic 8-ball that only says that on every side, and it would sell
merch
like
idea.
hotcakes.
Merch idea. Let's do that. Let's do it, man. Finally,
I mean, we could vary it. It could say the Jews, Joos. It could say Zionism. It could say the perfidious Jews. Like we could mix it up.
Can mix it up. Yeah. So I have to say that I remain impressed really with her. She has enthralled an entire group of people, so that.
Sorry, I was admiring the humidity that's dropping off of
off of your
here.
cup. Yeah.
Leaking all over me.
Well, it's just the hold that she has on people has just struck me for a while now. And so I really, in this piece that I put on Substack, we can put it in the description, just what she's able to do and how she's able to do it, and the way in which she's able to capture her audience is just a striking thing to me. So I decided to break it down. I think she's a con artist. I think she is a master of profilicity, which is an idea explained by this guy Hans-Georg Müller, a German philosopher, and his fellow writer Paul D'Ambrosio, I think his name is. He's a German. Hans, and he teaches in China. He's very interesting. At any rate, this idea of that he argues that identity is a kind of social technology, and that there's a kind of progression of social technologies, and the sort of the original one in sort of traditional societies is identities of sincerity. We lived through kind of Romanticism and the Industrial Revolution, and so it moves into what he calls identity as authenticity, like the authentic self, and it really kind of achieves its apotheosis in the late 20th century. But with the advent of social media and the digital imaginary, he says we've moved into this thing called profilicity, that we cultivate our online profiles and we negotiate socially and otherwise through these cultivated technologies. And so,
today, by the way, was the first time, and I'm saying this for the benefit of anybody in the audience who might be tripping on this. You've used this word profilicity with me a bunch of times. I never knew what it meant. And it looks so much like prolificity, like being prolific, that it didn't dawn on me until I read your piece today. I'm like, oh, the root word is profile. It's literally based on social media profiles.
Right.
So if anybody else out there is as dumb as I was about this, you're welcome. I will be the sacrificial lamb on this one, because I didn't get it until today.
You could have asked me at any time. No, that's like kind of maybe it's
I'm
a
the
little
words
bit of
guy. I can't tell you I don't know the word.
I know.
I have to figure it out on my own.
Inside baseball patois, right? But anyway, the idea is that we spend our time cultivating our personal brand and all these kinds of things. And most of us are basically conversant in the basic idea. And I think a lot of it, if you can imagine, I remember watching my kids. We got them a Wii years ago. and they would spend hours like making their character, right? And like make it look like you and change your eyebrows and color shirt and all those kinds of
our
things.
kids did the same thing.
Yeah, and all video games, of course, have some version of this now, or many of them do, right? Like my son, remember a couple of years was playing the latest Link game, on the Switch, Legend of Zelda, and you can spend all this time, changing your armor and your hair length and your weaponry and your fit, right, and all these kinds of things.
Although I do think that there was something unique about the way that the Nintendo Wii did it, because you saw a version of yourself in the game, and most people, most people tried to make it actually look like them. Like in any game where you have a character that you can customize, you can make yourself look like an orc warrior or whatever, right? But there was something about the Wii that it seemed like it encouraged people to make a representation of themselves.
Yeah,
and it occurs to me that there's something meta here about stepping back and observing yourself in a different form, engaging in a world or in an online forum or whatever.
Yeah, so he calls this second order processing, right? So that we watch other people watch us, right? We watch others watch ourselves, and there's this interesting recursive relationship that is generated by watching an avatar, a version of yourself, interact and be interacted with, right? And look, most of the time this is basically innocent. Right. But what any of us who have spent any kind of online time, being ourselves or versions of ourselves, know what it's like. It's this weird dynamic, when we've joked before, Steve, about being internet famous. You have gone through a period of time with that, especially when you were running 1Peter5 and you would go to the grocery store and somebody like, oh, that's Steve Skojek, or you go to a TLM somewhere and people like, oh, that's the 1Peter5 guy, right? And so these sort of micro celebrities. But what strikes me about Candace Owens is that she has almost like a preternatural knack for developing this sort of parasocial relationship with her audience through her profile. And she's really good at it. Like it's quite impressive. And I'm saying good at it. In other words, she's very effective.
Yeah, skilled. She's skilled at it.
Yeah. And I don't even know how conscious of it she is exactly. But look, we also know what it's like to chase the clicks, right? We all know what, that there's a peculiar edifying feeling when you put something out there and it gains traction. You've done this on a number of occasions. I've had my own, not nearly as many times as you have, but you put something on X or Facebook or whatever, and it just blows up, right?
And it's almost always the dumbest thing too.
Well, almost always, right, yeah. Right. But what if you could hijack that? Like, in other words, what if you could curate a profile, an online personality, which you could consistently generate click after click after click?
Well, I mean, you can see it. You can reverse engineer it out of some of the big accounts that share stuff all the time. I've done it multiple times. Like there's a whole formula that they use, and they all do the exact same thing. Right. But it's so disingenuous. I don't know who you have to be comfortable putting that out in your name.
Well, right. And so part of what I was trying to get at with the piece is that kind of recursive quality is that you become your avatar, right? And your avatar becomes who you are. And one wonders, what kind of tether you have to, your meat space reality. And therefore, there's a tremendous amount of power in the cultivation of these online brands, these online personalities, right? I mean, so much so that you and I could have an entire conversation about this person called Candace, and we don't even need to use her last name. And I think that's a pretty good litmus test as to how powerful she has become. So at any rate, I think that she's engaged in a con, and I go back and forth as to how conscious of it
that was exactly what I was going to ask you. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, what do you think?
So what's weird to me is, I was asked recently. I think you were the one who asked me, actually, if I've ever met somebody evil.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I said no, but the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, but there are people I've seen online that like give me a really bad vibe.
Yeah.
She's always given me a really bad vibe. Not evil, but just like, how can anyone listen to this? This person is obnoxious. They're abrasive. They don't know what they're talking about. They're so forceful with opinions that they clearly haven't done the work to substantiate. Like I run across these media figures that are like that. I mean, in some media figures, I just think they're great. I love them, but she was immediately, the first time I ever saw her, I'm like, nope, I'm never listening to this person. And I basically never have, unless it's been part of some controversy du jour. And then I still can only take it for a very brief period of time. So my gut feeling with her was so strong for so long that I've never taken the time to try to evaluate her. So I don't know how conscious she is. She doesn't strike me as extremely bright. I'm not going to say she's not intelligent. She clearly is.
Well, she has a kind of intelligence. It's a cunning.
It's a cleverness. Yeah. It falls in this Goldilocks zone of delusional optimism. Like there's a certain level of IQ above which I don't think you can be as delusionally optimistic. And they even say, like, when it comes to business success, there's a certain range of IQ where you can believe in yourself so much, but also not overthink things. And so you just execute like crazy. And it falls in that realm of cunning, I think. And you'll see it with a lot of these, I think of like Grant Cardone and all these business guys who are out there who are like, they're clearly sharp, but like they couldn't hold, a discussion with, an academic.
Yeah, like they're sharp, but they don't ruminate.
Right. There's no self-reflection. I mean, it reminds me of Mark Andreessen and retard maxing, right?
Yeah.
Just talking about, I never like go back and think about things that I've already decided and ask myself if I made the right decision. Like, what?
You and I are looking at that. We're like, wait, how does that?
What is that even like?
Like you, and part of me is like, you can do that?
That shit haunts me every day. Right, what are you talking about?
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know what it's like to be so confident that, and I really thought you made a great point about, kind of the eternal now, the eternal moment. It's like, whatever I'm saying today is the true thing. Whatever I said before, that was in the past, man. We're not going to go back there. We're not going to talk about that.
Right.
And I find that like, it's so essential for your integrity and your credibility to make sure you're consistent with previous versions of yourself. Or if you have an update to your software, you explain how it happened.
I used to think X, but now I think X is wrong because there's been evidence to the contrary. And I'll try not to make that same mistake twice, right? Or again, and so here I am kind of owning it.
There needs to be a missing link between those stages of your personal evolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's really good. Well, and so she, she does live in this sort of eternal present. And again, if you can consistently do that, the sky's kind of the limit, or maybe, the bottom of the well is the limit, because, you can just kind of say anything. And there's a certain segment of her very large audience. I mean, you go on one of her live streams and it's got, loads of people. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And she's developed this, again, that she's cultivated this audience that in the piece I call it devotional, that she's some kind of religious character, right? And so that the live stream functions as a kind of participatory liturgy, in which you can sort of be baptized into the secret knowledge that she's offering for the day.
I know we need to make her a holy candle. The Holy Santos to guard the hallway.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think she could put it on her merch shop and she absolutely would sell the heck out of it.
People would go crazy over it.
Yeah.
I was looking for, I know we've talked about it before. I had a graphic and I can't find it.
I want to say one more thing.
Yeah, go for it.
But in preparing the piece, I watched a number of her streams, and she's remarkably good at, they used to have this expression, with television, that such and such knows how to make love to the screen or make love to the camera.
Yep.
And man, she is really good at it. Like, and she excels, of course, at YouTube and Instagram and TikTok, right? And she's a pretty woman, right? She's got big, pretty eyes. again, not terribly attractive to me personally, but she's a pretty woman, and she uses her eyes and her hands in truly mesmerizing fashion.
Her
And
eyes
she can,
bother me. Her eyes bother me.
well, I think they bother you because they offend you in some, because I think that we talked about this last episode, you have this kind of sense, right? You have this, like, somebody is playing a trick on me, like something is not right with this thing. So her being offensive to you, I would just, I think that affirms your intuition.
There's something about her eyes. I don't want to be demeaning, but it's like, have you ever looked at the eyes of an animal and they kind of creep you out because like they're looking at you, but there's something that's not there that's supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And goat eyes are notoriously the worst. You just look at them and they creep you out, right?
Right.
There's like a wall behind her eyes, and I don't understand what it means, but it makes me uncomfortable. There's a darkness to it.
Yeah. So, anyway, my feed is getting all lit up over this, and
well, now ours is going to, because of what I just said. So that's fun.
Right.
But okay, the thing I was going to tell you about though is there's this. I forget the name of the book that this comes from, but there's this idea of one sentence persuasion, and I find it to be an extremely powerful heuristic to try to understand influence, right? And there are 5 categories under one sentence persuasion, and they're all very, very obvious when you think about them. Number 1, you justify people's failures. Number 2, you allay their fears. Number 3, you throw rocks at their enemies. Number 4, you confirm their suspicions. And number 5, you encourage their dreams.
Whew, that's good.
If you are able to work those themes into any piece of rhetoric that you're using, whether spoken or written or whatever, people will glom onto them.
Yeah. I suspect that we could, watch a short video of hers and we could score it. And I think that she would hit every one of those.
Yeah.
Every time.
And if she failed to do so, if she changed her mind, if she developed integrity and said, you know what, I don't feel comfortable doing this anymore, they would all abandon her in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Because it's about hearing their own views expressed back to them that makes people like her or Ian Carroll or any of these people, that's what makes them popular. It's not that there's something inherent about them.
Yeah.
It's that they are acting as like a dirty reflection of the people who are coming with kind of corrupted hearts and minds because they have imbibed these things. I mean, you and I, again, we're definitely open to the idea of conspiracy theories. Eric Weinstein did actually a great post about it the other day about the real conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's this thing that happens in conspiracy land, whether it's religious, whether it's political, whatever it is, where you jump from observing anomalies and saying there's something about this that doesn't make sense, there's something missing, it doesn't add up, to I understand why this happened. I can tell you exactly what happened. I know the motives. I know who's behind it. It's obvious.
I can tell you with confidence, right?
Yeah, it's obvious that it's this.
Yeah.
I have moral certitude that it's this. From where?
Yeah.
Where did you get that from?
Right. And you don't, and you conspicuously never have to answer that question, like from where, because you say, guys, it's obvious. You know this. And her famous line is like, I don't know, but I know,
Right.
I don't know, but I know. And like she does it with her eyes. Like it's like, I don't know,
right.
I know, and it is wild to watch.
And actually, this makes me want to. So Hillary White, our friend Hillary White, left a comment on your post about what we should talk about. Yeah, who made our mugs? Anyway, Hillary asked you to talk more about what you mean by spells and spellcasting, and I think it's appropriate here to talk about that because part of it is that thing that she does, where she says she knows, but she doesn't know.
Yeah. All right. So you're going to have to help me with this one because this is an idea, like, you and I have been talking together since before COVID. And I distinctly remember, I was in my office and we were on the phone, and it was one of those funny times where you're like, Kale, we need to stop having these conversations on the phone and we just need to record them because this is good stuff, which is actually probably the germ of what we're doing right now.
It is. And it's actually kind of annoying because sometimes I would like to talk to you when we're not on the air and you're like, no, save it for the show.
Yeah, right. But I remember one time we were talking about Catholicism, we were talking about the faith and all that nice stuff. And I kind of offhand, said to you, Steve, what is the functional difference between the way some people talk about, prayer or a sacramental or whatever, what have you, and casting a spell? And you're like, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
And ever since that, we had that little exchange, I've been borderline obsessed with the idea of magic. I am just so our audience is clear, I have zero attraction to the occult. I am the furthest thing away from Wicca and all things demonic. This is not my jam, I assure you. But I started to pay attention to the ways in which our language, the language that we use every day for business and for pleasure and for teaching and for talking on the internet and for all these kinds of things, our language is absolutely peppered with words that surround all things magical. Invocation, enthralled. I mean, and not only do we use this language all the time, it's all over literature. It's all over Shakespeare, for instance. And we have, as a culture, not believed in magic in any kind of real way for a very long time, right? It's not like, a decade ago, all of us believed in magic. And so now that we don't believe in magic, we haven't had a chance for our language to update. It's part of the language that we use, right? And so, and if you think of the word spell, right? You can spell a word, right? What does it mean to spell a word correctly, right? You're invoking some pretty much fixed, there's some wiggle room on the edges of most words, but it's pretty much fixed. But if you spell the word incorrectly, it doesn't work.
And that's interesting too, because the etymology of spelling as in letters and casting spells are different.
Yeah.
But in English now, in modern English, we use the exact same phrase.
That's right.
They don't come from there. There is no common origin between them. Yeah.
Right. And so, what I started to realize, and when you teach, at least when I teach, there's this weird phenomena that happens that you start talking and you're using words and you're using phrases and you become aware of yourself, or I become aware of myself using certain language, and I'll stick on a word because okay, so this word popped into my head. And the word itself has, multiple meanings. It's multivalent, right? And, nothing is coming off the top of my head right now, but that for instance, look at the word influence, right? We can talk about influencer culture. I remember my mom being worried that some of my friends had too much of an influence on me and all these kinds of things. Well, what does influence mean? Right? It really means spooky action at a distance, to use a kind of quantum
I love that
phraseology, right?
Yeah.
In other words, how is it that I can fire up the webcam here and I can sell a product, right? Let's just pretend that I was good at sales. What exactly is the mechanism in which I can use words and video and beam myself up into the World Wide Web, and it can compel you or you or you or you to hit buy, right? I didn't make you do it.
Right.
Exactly. I didn't take your finger and go, click, buy it now, right? But there's this weird mechanism in which my words penetrate into your consciousness,
Create a kind of compulsion.
and create a compulsion. Now, what is interesting about the word influence is it's the same word in which we get our word for the flu, as in the influenza, right? And so it has this kind of like, how exactly, now we know how a flu works physically now, but we maintain that word influence it's a kind of magic spell. In other words, it's an unseen controller of action. All right. So when I think about magic, like, I can invoke an image. Well, I'm calling forth an image.
Yeah.
Right. That's the language of, of the magician, of the mage. To cast a spell, like, I'm casting, I think of like a fishing line. I'm casting
now
something.
I want to look up all kinds of words.
Right.
And
Well,
their
this is what,
etymologies. Yeah.
yeah. So this is what happens, right? So you start to do these kinds of things. Well, what you will find is that our regular everyday spoken language is filled with the residue of magic. Do with that what you will, but it's part of the way that we conceive of and negotiate the world and community and interactions between people. So when I talk about Candace Owens as a kind of spellcaster of the first rate, it is, I mean it pretty technically, I think. In other words, and look, if you've ever done a deep dive into like hypnosis, we know that certain people are both susceptible to hypnosis, but also that certain people have a kind of knack for it. Now, the hypnosis bros will tell you that there's a process, right? And so every good salesman casts spells, i.e. uses language to compel action. They can create a mood. They can create action. They can create fear. They can create anxiety. They can create euphoria. So therefore, what is the functional difference between a poet and a magician? You think of somebody like, like Shakespeare, perfect example. Like, how is it that I can watch a Shakespeare play and I can be moved to tears, that I can be moved to fear, that I can be moved to swoon, to long, to hate, to love? It is one of those things that kind of hides in plain sight, because we've been taught to make fun of magic.
Right.
Magic is for cuckoo people, right? And it's not real, we will say. And so my counter to that is like, well, what do you mean exactly? Because the online space is filled with verbal magicians. Actors are they channel spirits.
Yeah. And
again, I mean it kind of really.
What's interesting is I was actually thinking about actors when you were talking about the idea of watching other people watching yourself. Like so many actors will not watch their own films.
Yeah.
It makes them uncomfortable to watch other people watching themselves. It makes them uncomfortable to watch themselves. And I wonder what the difference is between the ones who do and the ones who don't.
Yeah. That would be an interesting study, wouldn't it? Because in some sense, an actor, let's say that, you're in a movie, right? You're the lead in a movie, and, you put in this performance, and you are now in the audience watching the premiere, and everybody at the premiere knows that you're there, right? You're in the front row there, and they know that the you on the screen is not real, but they buy it, right? The suspension of disbelief is, and that's what we say, right? We say, what a performance, right?
Yeah.
And it's a curious thing.
But, it's interesting because you'll have, you'll have the actors who are like, I never watch myself in films. It bothers me. I don't want to do it. You know, it messes up my flow, whatever. And then I think about that scene in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where Sharon Tate is watching everybody take delight in her performance on the screen.
And she's taking delight in
them taking delight.
In them taking delight. But she's also, and I think she's such a lovely character in that film. I mean, there's just sort of a guilelessness to her, right?
Right.
That she's delighting in it, and she's delighted that other people are delighting in it. It's what a great moment, you know, in that. And I think that movie is a riff on, you know, what would it mean to be able to control a person's dream?
I mean, because we all come at things so differently that two different people can do the same activity with totally different intentions, totally different outcomes, totally different subjective experiences of what it is that they think they're doing. I mean, it's very, very strange the way this all works. And I, you know, just thinking about the idea of, you think of the mechanism of action for magic in the real world, classically has been understood to be, well, it's not God's power, so it has to come from, you know, from the devil. It has to be demonic power of some kind.
Right.
But it's like there's some other layer to this substrate here. I'm thinking of, like, you know, when we cut through a mountain to build a highway and we've got all the strata that you can see going down. And it's like,
that's right.
There are layers to this that are purely human. You're not invoking some diabolical power, but like influence and persuasion and rhetoric. And, you know, I even think about this in my own writing. Like I write things that make people cry. I write things that make me cry when I read them. And I'm just like, how am I able to evoke that?
Right.
I don't really understand how it works. And I've talked to you before too about how when I'm writing, I often feel like I'm channeling something. Like when I really get into the zone, I don't know where the writing's coming from. I might have a paragraph or something in my head. I might have some concepts or some notes. But if I sit down and I get into that place, my fingers just start dancing the keys. And I don't know what well I am drawing from, but it's flowing.
Yeah.
It's like I've tapped into some kind of a geyser and it just comes out. And just think about the number of thoughts we have that come into our minds unbidden, the analogies that we make.
Yeah.
You know, there's this word that I learned actually from ChatGPT the other day that I mentioned to you, isomorphic or isomorphism.
Yeah.
And it's the idea of directly parallel structures that exist within things that are superficially different. So, you know, for those of us who make a lot of analogies and metaphors, you know, it's very easy to unpack something by referring to something that is sort of a condensed symbol of that thing. So, you know, for example, I was trying to explain something about, you know, the sort of breathless anticipation of like waiting to see if somebody's going to do something. And I didn't have a good way to do it. So I was like, you know how in Labyrinth, like when Sarah is like starting to say the words about taking her brother and all the goblins are hiding in her closet and they're like, is she going to say it? Is she going to say it? Like I can mention that scene. And instead of spending 10 minutes explaining the thing that I'm trying to get at, someone remembers that scene and they're like,
it clicks in.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like a zip file for concepts. Like I can hand you a whole bunch of meaning really fast because you've already explored that in this other thing. And we have this common reference point. And because it's multifactorial, it's visual, it's auditory, it's all especially with cinema. I mean, cinema references are very powerful for this reason. I can give you like this compressed download of information really quickly by just referencing the right thing and saying that's like this.
Yeah. And you know, that's why, you know, all of my relationships and friendships, etc., have been heavy on movie references or TV references, right? Because it's shorthand, it's a compression engine, right? That I can, you know, like for instance, this is not related to what we're talking about, but I can say, so Steve, you're saying there's a chance.
Right. And I immediately know exactly what you're talking about.
You click in, right? And not only do you get the movie reference, Dumb and Dumber, right? But it's also, it represents an incredible guileless belief that this thing is possible.
Right, a childlike optimism against all odds. All this stuff. There's all these layers of meaning that you've already digested.
Right.
And so it makes that comparison so much more fertile because what would have taken you 1,000 words to explain, you got it like that.
Right. So it's interesting that you say that about writing. I write a little bit. You write a lot. You're a really good writer, and I'm okay. Like, I have my moments, but I don't feel like that typically with writing. Phrases will pop into my head. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, we were joking about two-factor authentication,
I thought that was a great line in your piece.
Yeah, so I'll get those kind of things from time to time. Now, my tweets, everything that I post on X, almost everything comes to me as a kind of like, it's visited upon me. I don't know where this stuff comes from.
And I can tell that. And it took me years before I understood that the reason why a lot of times you seem so cryptic is because you just got a download packet and you haven't figured out how to like decode it yet.
Right. So part of it is like I'm getting it out of my head so I can kind of look at it. Now, you might say, Kale, that's a little bit much that you share this with the world. But for me, it has become part of my externalizing process so that I can see something for it. But when I teach, I feel exactly the way you feel when you write.
Yeah. And that's why I think that looking for that experience helps us to find the thing that we are attuned to, like what our vocation really is.
Yeah.
Because it's different for everybody. I mean, some people do it making music, some people do it in other ways, but there's some place where it's more than just a flow state.
Yeah.
It's like you become something more than what you are for that period of time.
Right. And I mean, look, most days you go to the classroom and I'm a workman, right? I go in and I do my thing. But man, there are days where I go in and I always have a plan, right? I always have a kind of a basic idea of what I'm going to do. And then some days you go in there and it's like somebody's just plugged you into the deep currents of being itself. And you just like, I'm shining and I'm glowing.
It's almost like all of your other concerns, which are very real, and which you had walking into it. You're worried about the car repair you got to do. You had an argument at home, like whatever. But and you honestly feel entering that space, I don't know if I can do my job. And then something clicks and it falls away and you're there. And that's all that there is.
Right. And oftentimes I'll like be physically walking into the building, physically walking into the classroom, and I'm muttering to myself, I don't know how I'm going to do this today. Whatever kind of plates are spinning and crashing all around me and behind me. And it's like, and you go in and something happens, like something takes you over. I mean, I feel possessed, and I know that might make people feel a little nervous, but that is kind of what it feels like. In other words, it's like I'm the trumpet for some spirit that has decided to use me that day.
Isn't there a classical conception of a daemon, not a demon?
Sure.
That's kind of like a muse. I don't know a lot about it, but I've come across it.
Socrates talks about this in one of it might be the Apology, but it's one of the ones you'll find in the collection called the last Dialogues or something like that. Socrates' Last Days is, I think, the Penguin Classic. But yeah, he talks about the spirit that visits you. Now, we of course have the idea of a demon, and it's not really, Socrates doesn't mean it like a demon. He means it, in this instance, he means it as a kind of friendly spirit.
It's more like a muse, right?
Yeah, that's right. And so what Plato and his followers sort of believed is that you needed to kind of get yourself into a kind of mode of being, a sort of set of practices, which could consistently condition you to be receptive to the spirit so that you could kind of do your thing. And of course, one of my interests in Diana Pasulka's work.
I was just going to say this.
One of my interests in Diana Pasulka's work is she talks about these people who experience the download. And you and I
have
use
a protocol. Yeah.
And they have these protocols. And, in my Catholic hat, I would just say, like these are sort of forms of repetitive prayer that are meant to kind of get you into the zone, so to speak, so that you can be, receptive to the spirit, right? It's like, you're running around town and you're like, oh, I'm going to pop in a noon mass and everything's kind of scurrying around, and you kind of walk in and everything about the church is designed to kind of get you into this flow state, right? So it's the architecture, it's the silence, it's the kneeling, it's all these things that you can kind of, it's like, and look, and I'm sure you're the same way. Like as soon as the mass starts and it intones, like I kind of like typically like kind of like lock in, like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
and so
It's honestly one of the best arguments for having a deeply ritualized liturgy.
Correct. Yeah.
Because it is the same invocation of that state every time. When you end up having to play liturgy roulette and you never know what you're going to get and how much improvisation there's going to be and how sappy the music is and how much touching there's going to, like, that's different. But like one of the things I loved about the TLM was like I could go anywhere and it was like, boom, like the prayers at the foot of the altar started. I know exactly what's happening.
Right.
I know everything that's going to happen right up until the end. And the only wild card is the sermon.
Right.
That's
and so I would say this, I have found in my conversations with people who are not TLM folks, but, kind of serious about mass and all this sort of stuff. Like my mom is a perfect example. She and I were talking, this was a couple of years ago. I was at home and we were just shooting the breeze, and she and I were both kind of admitted to each other, yeah, like I kind of prefer daily mass to Sunday mass.
Because it's so much simpler and more streamlined.
It's quiet. It's simple. I have space. I don't have to like perform. It's just, it's so that was actually helped me understand the attraction to the TLM, right? Because, it's for all the reasons that you've just laid out. It's sort of, it's ritual. It's repetitive in the right way. It kind of, because it allows
it has a rhythm and a cadence that kind of, it's almost like, it's not hypnotic, but I mean, in a way, almost like where a lullaby calms a baby. There's got to be some kind of brainwave synchronization or something that happens because it brings you down into this different state.
Right. So at any rate, this idea of a daemon, these practices that you can find yourself in terms of channeling this experience. For me personally, and I know you're the same way, like, this is a space for deep integrity. And I'm using that word on purpose, of course, right? Integration, integrity. I am baffled that a human being could leverage that for bad.
Oh my God, it's so icky.
It really
it
is.
repulses me.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can do it.
Right. Well, but people do, right? And so to connect this portion of the conversation with how we started, there are certain online influencers who have figured out how to hijack influence. And again, I'm going to say it again, influence is spooky action at a distance. It's quantum.
God, I love that. It's perfect. It really is.
Yeah.
And, there are things out there about how they believe that the mind may be a quantum computer that can actually affect quantum entanglement on other objects.
Yeah.
Interestingly, and I've only read the first couple chapters of the book. It's interesting to me, but it's not really my bailiwick. But are you aware of The Secret? The idea, this book, The Secret?
Well, I've heard of it. Yeah.
It's about manifestation, right? So, it's originally Napoleon Hill did his whole thing, Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
And it was about this idea of like, you put this energy out into the universe of like, this is what I want.
Yeah.
And the universe gives it back. And the more you manifest these desires, the more you get it back. Right.
Yeah.
So Travis Taylor, not Tim Taylor. Tim Taylor's the one who did the protocol that we were just talking about. Dr. Travis Taylor, who's the guy on Skinwalker Ranch, who's on the UAP task force. He's done a whole bunch of stuff. He wrote a book called The Science Behind the Secret. And that's the basic thing about it is I thought it was ridiculous, but the more I looked into it, the more I realized that quantum physics may explain how this could actually be a real phenomenon, because the brain could actually use a form of quantum entanglement to sort of call forth out of the universe certain outcomes that wouldn't otherwise happen. And I want to get back to it just because the concept is so interesting, but I have so many books competing for me.
Yeah.
my attention.
For your
But
attention, yeah.
but it's a really, really interesting concept of maybe there's actually something scientific to this. Maybe we have a power we don't realize we have.
Yeah, I just think we do. You know, and again, to go back to the stage metaphor or analogy, but I'm going to be literal here about stagecraft. When you are in the presence of a great actor, or it doesn't even have to be a great actor, a good actor, you feel like some third thing is present and is happening. And you know, you can line up 10 people in a row who have good speaking voices and can say all the lines, right? But what is that weird quality? This thing that is almost,
oh my gosh, I know exactly what you're talking about, and you can't put your finger on what it is.
You can't put your finger on it, right? And so and Shakespeare knew about this, right? I mean,
great orators do the same thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And look, you know, Peterson is a perfect example. When he would get into his kind of fugue states on stage, I really mean, podcast Peterson's kind of a hot mess, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
But stage Peterson, it's a different thing.
It is, and I actually think it's especially profound because, for me, his voice was a barrier to entry.
Yeah,
he does not have a good speaking voice.
Yeah, the Kermit voice, right?
Yeah, and so like the fact that barrier is completely surmounted and you're still drawn in, to me shows how much more powerful what it is that he's doing is.
Yeah. Bro was meant to be in meat space, basically.
100%.
So, you know, so like, and you know that feeling like I'm in the presence of a happening. And we are drawn to that. I mean, it's incredibly attractive. And again, I mean that to this very sound Petersonian. I mean that precisely or technically, right? But again, what is that third thing that is now suddenly present? I can't measure it. I can't, again, this sort of reminds me of the Skinwalker Ranch problem, right?
Right.
They're going out of their way, and God bless them, you know, they're going out of the way. There are all these different ways of measuring phenomena and all this sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, like, there's this thing happening that they can't measure.
I mean, they're measuring it, but they don't know what it means.
Right.
And they can't develop empirical consistency about it.
Yeah.
And so it's like our instruments are saying that this is happening, but we don't know why. We don't know where it's coming from. And today it's like this, and tomorrow it's like that. And it's like there's something that it evades, you know, the human capacity to measure.
Right. So like in music, for instance, you know, a classic thing that the blues musicians would say is that, you know, they can watch 10 people play the same song, and maybe all 10 people are technically great, but like one or two of them have soul, right? To play with soul, right? And that's a sort of a shorthand of trying to capture the ineffable. Gabriel Garcia Lorca, the Spanish poet, has this very weird essay, and he talks about this concept of duende, right? And duende is this sort of charged presence of a spirit that certain artists can presence forth. That is not exactly them. It's not you, but it's this medium through which a performance presents itself to you as special, phenomenal, dazzling, we would say, right? Bro is playing out of his mind, right? You know, we have all of these ways of kind of approximating, and
what do we say? He was a man possessed.
Man possessed, right?
Right.
Exactly.
That's the phrasing that we often use.
That's right. You know, so I don't know what that is exactly, but I know that it's real, and that's part of, you know, maybe that's part of our frustration. So then again, if a thing can be real and unmeasurable and good, a thing can also be real and unmeasurable and bad. And that's where I get kind of chilly, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Well, and what has to be wrong with you that you're willing to participate in.
Yeah. Well, because you are, in fact, participating with and being channeled by a malignant spirit. I truly believe that, like with every fiber of my being. And that's why, I watch certain things. And, well, you were talking the other day. Remember you were talking about the movie The Ring?
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you watched it as a young man. You were like, ooh, that's scary. And then you watched it again, and it's like the movie makers decided to be evil.
Yeah. What's weird about it is usually the second time you watch something that's scary, it's less scary.
Yeah.
Second time I watched that, I had to shut it off. I'm like, there's something wrong here.
Yeah.
It's making me feel like it's almost bringing evil into the room, which is weird because that's the theme of the film, is evil coming into your room through your television, right? Through these videotapes that you play, and
boy, that's a metaphor. That's a metaphor and a half. Whew.
Right,
man.
It's not the they could curse the master copy and everybody could whatever.
No,
like that.
I don't mean it that way. Yeah,
no. I know you don't. I'm just saying we're talking about something different than that. I don't know if that's real or it's not. But it seems weird to me, the idea of like there's some mechanistic process by which you can, make hapless, unwitting victims, become a party to this weird occult thing that they don't know you're doing.
Have you ever read anything about pickup artists?
No, and you mentioned that book in your piece, and I actually grabbed the Audible book right away. I don't have my Kindle right now, but I'm probably going to get the book itself. But
pickup artists.
What was the name of the book?
Which one?
It was the red book, the female author, Confidence Games, something.
Maria Konnikova, Confidence Games and Why We Fall for It Every Time, or something like that. Well, that's a slightly different thing that I'm talking about. So we can go back to that.
Okay.
But I mean pickup artists, as in guys.
The guys who know the right ways to get girls. Who
go out to get girls, right? And what's weird about it is that these pickup artists, like, it works. And not only does it work for them, you could say, oh, well, bro's just super charismatic. What's wild about pickup artistry is that they can actually teach it. So like it's a hackable practice in which you can, in essence, talk a girl into bed consistently and dependably.
Like how is there a paint by numbers process,
right,
where that can work, because we're not computers that can just be programmed.
Right.
But in a way, maybe we are.
Yeah, we are, right? Yeah, we have these sort of moves, right? And what's so fascinating to me in reading some of the pickup artistry literature is that it's exactly the way Milton has Satan approach Eve. So in the Garden of Eden, Satan is in essence a pickup artist.
Okay.
And it follows the pattern. Flattery, dream casting. What were the words you used earlier? Right.
Yeah. Confirming fears.
Confirming fears.
Confirming suspicions, throwing rocks at enemies, encouraging dreams.
Yeah. Creating enemies so that you can use them to right. All of it is laid out in like perfect pickup artistry form. And so, that's like one of those things that you just sort of, you're like, huh, that's unfortunate.
Right.
Right. That it can work on us. And there are lots of non-sexual examples that we could talk about. Right. But that, the way that a boss dominates a meeting, for instance, like if you're not one of the members of the team, you can kind of watch it like with a bird's eye view, and you can say, oh, I can see what the boss is doing. The boss is controlling the meeting from before he even walks into the room. What's the temperature of the room? Are there waters in front of everybody or not? Is there a pad of paper and pen or not? Like, it's all these kinds of things. Like what face is he wearing when he walks into the room? Does he walk slowly into the room? Does he charge into the room? Does he raise the tenor and temperature of his voice or not? Does he speak lowly? And so everybody has to lean in. Like all of these mechanisms are deployable for if you are willing to embrace the tools.
Now, is it generally considered calculated artifice, or is it just some people just do it naturally? I mean,
Well,
like I think Trump does it naturally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a good teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Like I really am. I can tell. I've been in the classrooms enough to know, like whatever it is I'm doing, like it works. Okay, and I couldn't tell you exactly what my moves are. I don't go in with this, okay, in minute 2, I'm going to say this. And then minute 5, I'm going to tack away from this. And then I'm going to bring it back together at minute 9. Like, I don't think of it in that kind of conscious way. Like, I'm just following the spirit.
But isn't it because you are a true believer? Because I think there's something to be said for true believers are very persuasive.
Yeah.
As long as they're cogent.
Right.
There are true believers who are nuts, right? But there are true believers who are very cogent, and then like they are very persuasive because they've bought in. Like the best salesman is the guy who believes in the product he's selling.
Right.
Every time.
But we also know that there are people who, my dad used to have this, say this expression, oh man, Jim, he could sell ice cubes to Eskimos.
Right. And so that has to do with that sort of, I don't know, man, that snake charmer kind of thing. I don't know what it is.
Well, it's magician work.
It is
right?
magician work. But I mean, to imagine being so self-aware and so aware of others that you can engineer that experience. To me, that's totally incomprehensible. Like I'm aware sometimes.
Why? Because both of us are aware of it, but I think I know what you mean. What do you mean by incomprehensible? Because you understand it, sort of?
Because I'm so in the moment whenever I'm doing things. Like there's no plotting involved. I mean, I'm the kind of person who will rehearse a difficult conversation before I have it, and then I'll go in and have the conversation, and I will totally abandon the plan and say something 100%.
Else. Every time. Every time. Every time.
Like, so I'm trying to imagine what it's like to say, this is what I have to do to control the situation. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to execute all this. It's kind of like, you ever had that feeling when you watch, I have this particularly like with late night talk show hosts.
Okay.
Where I'm like, I could see that guy as jovial, as convivial as he is, stepping off stage and the smile goes away and he's just an asshole to everybody, right? There's that feeling of like, this could all be put on. It's so warm and it's so appealing, but it could just be an act. And then there's other people you see and they're like, no, that's just who they are. You can just tell that it's sincere.
Yeah. Those guys are famous in Hollywood, right? I mean, Ellen DeGeneres is a classic example of someone who had I don't know if she still does, but had a preternatural ability to make the audience fall in love with her.
But she was also notoriously mean to her guests.
I know. But in that kind of jokey sort of way, right? So there's the edgy types, and I think Letterman was a similar type of person.
Letterman is one of the people I think of in that way.
But America loved Ellen DeGeneres, right? America loved her self-effacing humor. And what's so fascinating about somebody like Ellen DeGeneres is she's not an attractive woman, right? Yet she had this charm, again, think of that word, to cast a charm. She had the charm necessary not only to make the person sitting in the seat next to her be disarmed, but she could disarm an audience in Iowa.
Yeah.
Beaming her show from Los Angeles, California. I mean, it's such a strange thing. But yes, I agree. I think that there are people who wear it and there are people who are it. And look, I think this is what a confidence man is. I mean, I did a deep dive into, we always hear of like a con job or a con artist. And I remember one day being like, what does that word mean? Because in my head, con means not. Right. So then I looked it up.
It's the opposite of pro. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So I went, this is 5-6 years ago. I did a deep dive into this. But the root of con, like the con man or the con game is confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's the ability to not only be confident, right? Remember, con means with fides, with strength or with trust. right? And so there's the ability to create trust in a stranger
Mm-hmm.
and to use it. Now, I would tell you that one of my powers as an effective classroom teacher is that I can disarm my students so that they will trust me with what I'm saying. They don't always agree with me. It's not like fascistic or anything like that.
Right.
But I can convey to them that I like them and that I want them to get it. But that's true, right? I mean, that's what's weird, right? In this conversation, it's weird talking about myself in this way, but like, I actually do want them to get it because I want them to love the thing that I love, right? But I know that there are people who can do exactly what I do, but not out of any sense of like they love it and they want to share that love, but they like to be like the Pied Piper or something, playing the flute and making the rats follow them. It's a weird thing, dude. I don't even think I understand it.
No, I don't either. It's so weird. And, I have this thing, like I've been thinking about this more about how so I'm an externalizer. We've talked about this, right? In order for me to think clearly, I have to get my thoughts out of my head in a way that I can look at them, evaluate them, and then take the things that I actually know I believe and bring them back in, right?
Yeah.
So whether that's through conversation or through writing, like there's various ways that I do it. And one of the reasons that I need to do this, I have come to realize, is that I have all these mental subroutines that almost break down into different characters in my head. They're not voices. It's not like multiple personalities.
Yeah, no, I know.
But it's like, I have the observer and I have the explorer and I have the witness and I have, I have Kenny Powers. Like I've joked about this.
I love it. Yeah.
But like I have this guy in my head that like if I'm walking through a grocery store or whatever, he's making comments about literally everybody he sees.
Yeah.
And they're completely unfiltered. They're embarrassing to me. It's almost like I'm walking with an embarrassing friend. And I'm like, shut up, stop talking, right?
I don't need that thought right now. Thank you. It's like,
and so and I have this guy who's really weird, who I call the meta observer, right? And that is a guy who I can be in a very emotional situation, expressing genuine emotion, sorrow, anger, fear, whatever. And the meta observer is sitting there in the back of my head going, oh, that's interesting. That thing you just said was rhetorically effective. Let's see if that works. Like he's a critic.
Wow.
He's like a theater critic and he's watching what I'm doing. And there are times when his voice in the back of my head makes me feel like, am I being fake? Am I being artificial? How can there be a part of my brain that is detached from the emotion that's looking at what I'm doing and saying, hey, you should say that more often because look at the reaction that you got. And it's like, no, I said it because I meant it, right? So there's almost like this dialogue between them. But it makes me wonder if these people have some version of that they're like, you know what? I'm going to listen a lot more to that and I'm going to let that become the strength.
Well, because the incentives, you can see the way that you can be captured by your incentives, right? And of course, incentives can be perverse, quite simply. But if your incentives are to make sense, if your incentives are to reach out and to connect and these kinds of things, that tends to mute the nasty, capturable, domineering voice, if you will.
And we all have aspects of this where, if you're socially adroit, you know how to be disarming, you know how to be charming, you know how to make people laugh, you know how to make people feel comfortable with you.
Yeah.
You could be having a bad day and you don't actually feel like putting on that smile and making someone else feel good, but you know how to do it and you know that it's the socially correct thing to do. I feel like all of this kind of circles around this concept that my friend Tomas and I used to always say, make sure you use your superpowers for good.
Yeah.
Because we've all got them. They're all different, but we've all got a version of superpowers that we need to make sure we're using for the good. And if we don't, it's a short road to becoming a villain more and more.
But what's fascinating, just to add a wrinkle to that, because I agree with that. But what's fascinating to me is that you can actually believe that you're doing this for the good and still actually be fooling yourself because you're not doing it for the good you say to yourself you're doing it for.
Sure.
Right. Unconscious desire, unconscious motivations.
I mean, look at the areas in our lives where we rationalize things.
That's right. That's right.
You know, we're like, I probably shouldn't be doing this, but it's not that bad, or, you know, whatever.
Totally.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, so that, and I have to say that is part of the enigma of Candace that I don't quite get, because I'm watching her. And again, I'm like as skeptical as they come. It's not like I am not, like, her spell is not working on me, right? Because I'm not participating in the super chat. I'm not going to buy her merch. Like,
Right.
I'm not going to be a fan, right?
But you feel this magnetism.
Yeah, right. And
Look,
then
Fuentes has always had the same effect on me.
Perfect example. Yeah,
Nick Fuentes, and I'm like, I can't stand this smug little bastard.
Right.
And yet, when I start watching him, like, there's something magnetic. There's something compelling in the way he presents himself.
See, but for me, the difference between the two of them in my head is that I think he has his tongue much firmer in cheek than
he's
she
way
does.
more self-aware.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I'm watching Candace again. The last couple of days, I've watched a decent amount in preparation for this piece, and like, I'm sitting there thinking, like, I think she actually, in this moment, like in this sentence, in this segment, before she does her commercial break, I think she actually believes this.
Yeah.
And that's wild, right? I mean, that's crazy. And I think that's what people buy. And I mentioned that at the beginning of the piece when I saw her going off on Brigitte Macron. This was, you know, months ago now. And I saw her say, I will stake my credibility on the fact I am confident, you know, and I cannot wait for discovery. I hope they sue me. But Brigitte Macron is a man. And I remember watching, it was just a clip. Again, this was 6-7 months ago, whatever it was. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, could it be true?
Right, because somebody who would say all that, because we always ask that question, cui bono, who benefits from this, right?
Right.
Like, if you're going to do something like that and you're not sure, you're going to wind up like Alex Jones at the bottom of a $1 billion lawsuit, and you're going to lose everything.
Most people are scared of, like, losing their net worth.
Yeah.
Now I know that there are all kinds of different ways of protecting your actual net worth, you know, by LLCs and all that kind of stuff. Fine. But in that moment, I just caught myself being like, man, she actually believes this bullshit. Like, really.
Right.
And I think that is a superpower. I just don't know if she's in charge of her own superpower.
Yeah, I agree.
So like, what is? Like, what is in charge of it, right? So,
there's something, the word that pops into my mind when you're describing this, there's always almost something feral about her. Like, it's wild. It's not, it's like this untamed ability to lose yourself in your own self-generated delusion.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it persists when she's not on air. Like, does she get out of a show and talk to the people who are filming it, or, you know, her assistant or her husband or whatever?
Catch a load of that bullshit.
Yeah,
like,
and I doubt that's the case. Like, I
don't think she breaks kayfabe.
She might drop the level of intensity, but she's going to be like, no, I really think this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
So one of the things, you know, you're talking about these sort of multiple internal personalities. I think Peterson at one point talked about them as being subpersonalities.
Yeah, I call them subroutines, cognitive subroutines. Yeah.
And, you know, when I'm trying to teach my kids writing, you know, I ask them, I invite them to imagine sort of two guys on the shoulder, you know, the old meme with the devil on one shoulder. Right. So anyway, it's a version of that. But I said, look, I need you to think of, like, you have two little mini versions of yourself, you know, on your right and on your left, right? And the funny thing about writing, and again, I'm talking about academic writing primarily, but the funny thing about writing, of course, is that, you know, you fire up Microsoft Word or Google Docs or what have you, or you've got a blank page, and it's just kind of staring at you. And in my time teaching kids, some kids will just immediately just start typing or immediately start writing. And then other kids are like, right?
Yeah.
And so I realized that some people are generous on the front end and some people are stingy on the front end. And some people are generous on the back end or stingy on the back end. And the stingy person, of course, is the critic's voice. That's a stupid sentence. Why am I even writing this? Et cetera, right? And so what I'm always trying to encourage my kids, my students, to be like, look, you need to think you are the bee's knees when you start. I want you to love every bad sentence you're writing right now. Just get it on the page. And then later on, you can invite the critical version of you, the nasty one, the cold-hearted one. Think of your worst enemy saying, you're ugly and your mama dresses you funny. Take that one and shape it into what it needs to be. Right. And so, again, that's another one of those sort of weird things about like the human person.
Well, I mean, a lot of it, I think, is rooted in formation. Children who grow up facing a lot of criticism for error are going to be much more stingy.
Yeah.
Hemingway famously said, "Write drunk, edit sober," right? And it's terrible advice, in my opinion. You can get away with it a little bit when you're young. Like, there is something to be said for lowering those inhibitions.
But you get the point, right? The point
going
is
in, because what you're trying to do is shut up the critic,
right?
And let the part of you that just is trying to express the thing come forward and have it say, because the critic can come in with the scalpel later and carve away the things that aren't good.
Yeah. I think this might be apocryphal, but another thing that he said, Hemingway, was just write a shitty first draft.
But I agree with that. And
exactly.
And when I was a kid, I absolutely did not. I grew up, my first drafts got me A's, right? So I thought I don't have to do anything more than this, right? And
practically you didn't, right? I mean,
at least for the purposes of school, I did.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
But then I graduated, and I realized that my competitors are not fellow students who don't like writing or who hate essays or whatever. They're good writers.
Yeah, right.
They're people who have honed their craft, right?
Yeah.
And so what I learned, and what I always tell writers, when people ask me for advice, I'm like, you have to understand that writing is rewriting. That first draft is like, imagine that you're a sculptor and you've got a block of clay and you just need to get it into a basic shape, right? You get it on the table, you slump it down, you pull away the excess, and you get it into the basic shape of a human body or of a head and shoulders, of a bust or whatever. And then you come back and you begin to carve finer details. But every pass, you're refining. But so many people just are so scared about that first thing, they can't get to the later ones.
Yeah.
And I find that all the best work really comes out in those later passes, which younger me would have scoffed at.
Why? Just because you would have felt it a waste of time? And because I was high on my own supply. Like, it worked. Yeah. Right.
Like, I was good at it. My teachers would, to my detriment, my teachers in public high school, would hold up my essays in front of a whole class and be like, this is a college level essay, right?
Right.
And I would be like, I literally rewrote your question. I didn't even study, I just added some filler words and stuff like that. And then in the lunchroom, kids would be like, you nerd, like, and I was like, and sometimes I wasn't even in the classroom. Like, it would be another class.
Yeah. Oh, good.
And the teacher would hold up and I would be like, I didn't do this for brownie points, man. Like, I'm just trying to get a grade here. Like, I don't know what to tell you, but it worked. And when something works, the selective pressure goes away.
Right. So think about that again in the context of which we're talking about. If you can stream and get, a couple of million people on a live stream, how self-critical are you going to be?
Right. Honestly, in a way, it's why I think little shows like ours are very compelling.
Yes.
Well, no, because we were talking earlier about being able to walk into the building and do your job and everything falls away, right? We were talking about that a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
Other than writing, this is the other place for me.
Well, I was going to say, we could talk and I, and again, the benefit of we're trying to be regular about this, this is the time in which we're going to do it. And I can work or I can get everything done beforehand or after, or afterwards.
Yeah.
When I'm here, like, this is it. Like,
but we both have lives that are kicking our asses in different ways.
Right.
And there are times when it's like, we just can't get our heads in gear to like sit down and record. And then the minute we get here, I'm like, I should have done this earlier because now I feel better.
Yeah, right. It's actually right in the process of doing this thing. Yeah, like I like my shoulders. I'm not as tense. Like my stomach, my chest opens up a little bit. I'm just like, oh, okay. Well, this is kind of what we're doing.
And we need to learn to pay attention to the places where that happens for us, because for everybody it's different.
Right. This is not a commercial. Why everybody should have a podcast.
Right.
Please no. Selfishly.
And by the way, I mean, I had a podcast in the old days when I had 1 Peter 5 and I interviewed, dozens and dozens of different guests. You were the only guest I had where I really felt like, holy crap, like I could do this for another 3 hours, because we found that conversational synergy.
I remember that day. Like I remember what I was wearing. I remember where I was. I remember what time of year it was. I was in my classroom actually. And we actually had to artificially shut that down.
And it was the first time I think we had ever talked like on camera. Like we hadn't met in real life.
Yeah. That's right.
But it was just like, oh, there's a synergy here. And so I think we always knew later on we were going to have to do this again. But I mean, I could try to do this same thing with 100 other people and it wouldn't work.
So I don't know if I ever told you this, but this is before we recorded the podcast, even that first podcast for 1 Peter 5. But we were going back and forth. This is before you had even really commissioned that first piece that I wrote for you. We had talked on the phone twice, I think it was. And my wife walks in in a very, because we were on the phone for a long time. We were like well over an hour. And I don't do that. Like I don't talk on the phone.
I don't talk on the phone to anybody.
Ever. Yeah, right. And so Demi's sort of like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, it's right. So anyway, I get off the phone and I look at her. It's like, yeah, I like Steve. Steve's good people. And I say my second sentence is, I'm going to work with Steve at some point. I don't know when or how, but I mean, it's like, I just knew
You've never told me that before. That's funny.
Yeah. And she's like, really? Isn't he kind of a trad? I was like, yes, sort of.
You saw through that right away, though. You saw. I think I was an aesthetic trad. I was a trad who was looking for systems that made things make sense that didn't make sense.
Well, think about it in the registry.
And authenticity. I was looking for authenticity.
Right. Well, think about it, in the context of this conversation that we've already had, right? What you were chafing against was the jail of your profile, right? Because one of the things that you would always say to me, because I think I was the first person to sort of admit that I like Jordan Peterson to you, because all of the Tradistan hated Peterson, right? For whatever
I didn't even
reason.
realize that.
Right. But you said to me, he's just so free in his ability to explore his ideas. And I just remember thinking like, oh, that's funny. I hadn't thought about that because I've never quite felt as
well. It's
jailed.
Because when you exist in a universe like that, what ends up happening is you become.
You're talking about the trad universe.
Yeah. You become a prisoner of the sort of ideological rigor that exists, right? And so I watched Peterson's first lecture on the scriptures. Yeah. Actually, I never ended up watching any more. I should go back to them, but I watched the first one, and what he was saying was fascinating.
Yeah.
But what I was struck by is he has the freedom to talk about this, like, and to work through it and to think about it out loud. And nobody's sitting there waiting to call him a heretic, right?
That's right.
Nobody's sitting there waiting to parse it down to the minutest detail and be like, well, St. Thomas says. It's like, sacrum says. It's like, I will never stop using that.
Yeah, I know. It's so perfect.
That phrase belongs to Kale. That's his generic name for any encyclical that gets cited by trads. But
that's right.
But I was just like, wow, like he has the freedom to actually inhabit this and figure out what it means to him, what it might mean to other people, what it might mean historically. And he doesn't have somebody standing there waiting to wrap a knuckle across his rulers going, that's not the appropriate way to look at this.
Yeah.
And I had gotten to the point where I felt like that's all I was dealing with. Like I had built an audience of people who were ready to pounce on me if I said anything that didn't fit what they wanted from me.
Right. And in part because you became the avatar, you became their knight in shining armor to fight all those nasty modernists, right? And so you needed to be pure, like they needed you to be pure. So any kind of playing outside of the lines would cause a kind of panic in them.
Right. Because can I really trust this guy? He's
right,
not,
right.
you know.
I need to trust him. I need to trust him.
Yeah. And what's interesting is I have a lot, because I'm an externalizer, and I have this chorus of voices, which I have started to compare to a kind of harmony or polyphony. Like imagine at a concert, you're at an orchestral concert, right? And the orchestra pit, they're warming up and everybody's playing their instruments and it sounds like cacophony.
Yeah, yeah.
That's my normal brain.
Yeah.
And then when the conductor shows up and begins to focus everybody, they all sync up. So for me, harmony sounds like quiet. It's the silence between thoughts. It's all of them are all now aligned. All those little cognitive subroutines, they're all working the same problem. And the cacophony goes away and there's focus and there's unity and there's polyphony, right? And so the reason that I bring this up is because I don't have anybody around every day to talk to, I'll use my stupid clanker, right? I'll pull up the AI on my phone, which for me is ChatGPT just because it has a long history of context with me. And I don't have to re-explain everything. And I'll talk through things while I'm working. I mean, I'm driving in the car and I'm just dictating into my phone and I hit the audio button and I let it do its responses back. I do a lot of brainstorming this way. And something that I have come to understand about the way that this works and the way that 1 Peter 5 worked for me specifically.
Right.
I was telling it about how I don't want to do polemics anymore. Like I've spent so much of my life making arguments in service of getting some point across, of persuading people of things, etc. And what I've learned after 30 years of doing that is that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like I know there are people who become persuaded. There are some. But generally speaking, when do you ever see somebody really change their mind because of an argument if they came into it with a pre-existing bias, right?
Very, very rarely. Very rarely. It happens every now and again.
And so what ChatGPT brought to my attention, because it knows my patterns, is it said, what you do is you invite people to an experience. You're not arguing them into an experience. And I started thinking about it and I was like, that's actually what made 1 Peter 5 different. It's why I think it took off. Because I had looked at the world of trad polemics, and I remembered trying to send articles from other established trad publications to people that I knew when I was becoming a traditionalist and I was trying to understand it. I was like, here, read this. And they were like, they would come back and they were like, I can't read that. That person is so nasty. They're so negative. I was looking for the arguments. I wasn't looking at the tone. I wasn't looking at the rhetoric. I knew that it was there, but I was trying to understand, are they right or are they not? And I would try to give it to someone else and a wall would come down. They'd be like, no, I'm not even going to look at it.
Wow.
And so when I look back at the best pieces that I wrote there and the best work that we did, it was about inviting people to come see, hey, this is beautiful. Hey, this is true. Like you've been given something else. Let me show you this other thing that's more of the thing that you're looking for. I wasn't trying to beat them over the head or call them names or say if they weren't doing this, they're not on the team or whatever else. It was, and I'm not going to say I never got combative. I did. It's very difficult to live in that world and not do it. But when I was more successful at what I was doing, it was because I was saying, come with me, come see this thing that I found. I found a treasure. It's not mine. Come check it out.
Yeah, but what's interesting hearing you say this now is that you were bigger and better than your profile, right? Like, and I think that is what ultimately unspooled you, was that you actually understood that you weren't your avatar. That there was an authentic core. And that would be my one caveat to Mueller's work, is that he sort of sees this as just a sort of a progression. I think there's a way to be integrated and authentic, even in the age of Profilicity.
I think so too.
But many people skip that part, right? That
or they just get caught up in their own thing. And what I would always say to people, I'm sure I've told this story before. There was a particular moment in time before I left 1 Peter 5, where there was a dinner in Rome, and all the heads of all the trad Catholic publications were invited.
All the five, all the five families.
Yeah, basically. And it was a secret dinner because the person who was holding it didn't really want to be associated with it. It was somebody of some renown. But
why weren't you there?
Well, I was invited.
Okay.
And I told the person inviting it, who I considered a friend.
Yeah.
I said, the last thing I want to do is be in the room with those assholes.
Wow.
Because they're all high on their own supply. Like, they all believe they're important. They all take themselves so seriously. Like, my whole thing, the whole time,
you just knew it. You just knew it.
Yeah, my whole time, I was like, I'm a, you know, I always loved this about Glenn Beck. You know, whatever you think about him or his ideas or whatever else.
Supremely
talented media guy who is ultimately constantly self-deprecating.
Yeah.
He would be like, I'm a rodeo clown. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, right? I always was making fun of myself because it's like, how do you take yourself that seriously? You know, that you're Taylor Marshall and you put a TM after your name and it's not a joke.
Like it was, I remember sending you that tweet where you're like,
it's still there.
I was like, this is a joke, right? You're like, no, Kale, he means it.
Yeah. Like, on his X profile, it's Dr. Taylor Marshall TM. Like, he trademarked his own name. And I'm just like, what are you even doing? The minute that these guys stop being able to laugh at themselves, they go down a weird path and they start doing weird stuff and they lose credibility, and then all this drama starts up and everything. So, you know, I said that to this guy who invited me, and he's like, so you're telling me it's going to be a gigantic circle jerk? And I was like, yeah. I was like, I love you. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to hang out with those people. I don't like those people.
Right.
I started this because I didn't think they were providing something that people needed, and I wanted to provide an alternative.
Yeah.
And, you know, later I found out that it ended up being a lot of drama. They had to make sure certain people didn't sit next to each other and all this stuff. And I'm just like, that's just the last thing that I want to do. But that's the world that comes out of these competing fiefdoms of, I'm the one you should be listening to about this. No, you're not. You're just a voice. Like, the minute that the people who are talking about the news become the news, you've lost me.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear about the commentators and the stories about their lives. I don't, you know.
Okay, but what strikes me as you say this out loud is that there's a non-insignificant chunk of people who seem, from an audience standpoint, who love the drama, though. What do you make of that?
I'm sure that there are. I'm sure that there are.
No, I mean, what do you make of that, though?
I think people like having tribes. I think people like having teams. I think, you know, going back to our discussion about conceptual zip files, like, you know, it's easy for somebody to be like, you know, I think such and such commentator, you know, they're great. Everything that they say is great, you know, and in the minute you criticize them, they're all up in your business, right? Which you're dealing with now, because you offered a very measured critique of Candace.
Right.
And you're literally being called as evil as it comes.
I mean, that was funny. I mean, like, by the way, audience, Steve is not joking. Like, somebody actually said that about me.
Someone who is not unintelligent.
A half an hour ago said that I am, you know, and he rattled off a couple of like pretty scurrilous characters, but Kale is the spawn of Satan or something like that.
Yeah,
like,
so it's absolutely absurd, right? And so I don't understand how this works for these people. I don't know. Like, I understand that it's easy to outsource. You know, we talked on the last episode about, you know, Rush Limbaugh, and when we were kids, you'd listen to it and people were ditto heads. Like, people love this idea of becoming part of a thing. And then that thing starts to kind of subsume a lot of, you know, they're outsourcing their thought, they're outsourcing their conclusions, to some extent, their identities. Like, I am part of this tribe.
Yeah.
And I get that, because we all have an inclination to want to be part of a community. And particularly a community of like-minded persons.
Yeah.
And we don't have the ability to do deep dives on literally everything. You know, like the construction worker who's listening to talk radio or listening to this podcast or whatever, like, he's spending his whole day grinding out in the heat, working hard, and maybe he's listening to this while he's working, maybe he's listening on the way home. And you know, like, he probably just literally doesn't have the time in his day to do deep dives into some of the stuff that we do.
Yeah.
And so I completely understand that, and that's fair, but people lose themselves in this stuff. And I think, you know, the sort of the Socratic method idea of like, I'm not the teacher, I'm just one of the lead students. Like, we're all learning this together, you know, is the appropriate approach.
Socrates calls it midwifery.
Yeah.
You know,
you're helping to birth concepts into being,
right, exactly.
Yeah, and so I think it's really important, you know, to have we talk a lot about epistemic humility, but a kind of personal humility. I'm fallible. I will do my best to try to get things right. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not. I know I've got areas where I'm weak. I'll try to admit them. But like, you know, when you become subsumed into this thing that becomes so much bigger than you think it could be, it's very easy to start feeling important. It's very easy when you start looking at your numbers and you've got hundreds of thousands or millions of people who are following what you're doing, and you're like, maybe I am more important than I thought I was, you know?
Yeah.
And there's a trap that lies down that road,
right,
where you've just got to be really careful not to avoid it. And I just think most people have a hard time avoiding it. And I mean, maybe my superpower is massive insecurity, you know, because it's like, it's not a great thing in other areas of my life, but in an area where like, I don't want to get too big of a head, it helps, because I'm like, ultimately, I don't really believe that about myself.
Right. There's what is that condition where you
think you're smarter than you are?
No, where you don't, where you, the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. I think that's I mean, obviously it can be runaway and malignant in its own way, but I think that a baseline, you need to have that as part of your subroutine, right? That, you know, maybe I'm just full of it, you know.
Well, look at the number of people who can't just say, I got this wrong. You know, I mean, I don't know, but I know, you know, like, look at the strength of, I will bet my entire credibility on this. I will bet all the money I have. And like, people who make these grand claims and then they can't be wrong. People who base their entire identities on their stories about themselves or other people being right. They don't have any room to say, you know what? I totally screwed the pooch on this.
Yeah. I don't, that's where I run out of understanding, because I don't know how you can get that far into a bit that you have no way to climb back to reality.
Yeah. Well, what's also really weird about it is that it extends to the way that you treat other people. My old friend, Dr. Mike Cirilla from Steubenville, a theology professor there, he used to always say that what he admired about Chesterton is that he would argue with people and he would really, you know, battle it out. But he's like, but he gave them enough room that if he convinced them that they were wrong, they could change positions without losing face.
Yeah. Wow.
Like if you put yourself in a position where the minute that I convince you you're wrong, you have to eat a crap sandwich. Well, why is anybody going to admit anything?
Yeah. That's like the debate me bros.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I have no interest in debating people. I have interest in good faith conversations where you work together to excavate truth and meaning and things like that, because that's where the good stuff is. Debates, I don't know what debates even do for anybody. I don't know. They don't do anything for me personally.
Yeah. Well, I think for some people, it must be a kind of way to burnish your profile. Again, going back to this Profilicity thing. Whenever I see somebody say, you know, I'll pay you $20,000 to come on my podcast to debate X, Y, and Z. I mean, part of it is bluster, but a lot of it is just sort of burnishing your profile.
Well, I mean, look, I think there are people who can do it earnestly and in good faith. For example, I didn't get to watch it yet, but Jesse Michaels just debated Michael Shermer, the professional skeptic who founded Skeptic Magazine, on his podcast about UAPs, right? But Jesse, being who he is, he's very magnanimous. Like, he didn't try to corner the guy all the time. Like, he was able to have a natural rapport and a give and take. And at the end, Shermer was like, those guys on that show treated me better than I've ever been treated anywhere else. So it wasn't like a standard debate, right?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I get that.
But I think the problem with debating is that what it rewards is people who are really good at a particular style of rhetoric, not the person who has the better understanding of how to figure things out, the better epistemology. Like, you're not as concerned about getting to truth as you are about scoring points.
Right. Truth is in some sense neither here nor there.
Yeah.
It's the sale.
It's about, who sold it better than the other guy. And a lot of times the people who are the best excavators of truth and authenticity and things like that are not as good, like, on the fly at debating, because their skills are honed towards research and digging things up, and they're not towards, oral argumentation.
Yeah.
So that's that.
So I wanted to ask you, you tweeted something the other day that kind of blew up.
And it wasn't about Bison Twitter?
And it wasn't about Bison Twitter. That was a weird morning.
That one actually blew up even more. Which is crazy.
When I woke up to Bison Twitter 2 days ago, I was like, I didn't even click on the video. I was sick of it before I even got a chance to watch the video. So I still,
and that poor guy.
I know. Apparently he's been pretty funny about it in the aftermath.
Yeah.
But
for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, because you live in a cave somewhere, this poor guy, this old guy at Yellowstone Park. He's walking along a road at a designated campground.
Yeah, actually minding his own business.
His own business. He's with his grandson, granddaughter. It's hard to tell because they have long hair, and in the video, it could be a 13-year-old boy or a 13-year-old girl. Can't really tell. And there's this bison that has invaded this campground. And again, it's an open campground. The National Park Service rules were being followed.
Yeah.
Thousands of comments have been about, FAFO, F around, find out. Nobody was doing anything they weren't supposed to. People are like, you shouldn't get out of your car. It was a campground. These people were making breakfast at a campground that was open during the mating season of the mighty American bison, right? So, and this bison came into this active campground, started charging people, started rolling around on the ground, being very aggressive, alpha, behavior. And this truck goes by, and it seems to get this bison's attention. And this old guy and his grandchild, they stopped for a second, took one photo, like, that's it. They're like 100 yards away, according to the photographer who actually filmed the whole thing. He's an Army combat photographer, professional. And he's like, he didn't say he was using a telephoto, but you can tell there's a foreshortening of distance that happens. And he's like, they were way outside. Like, the Park Service is 25 yards. They were at least 100 yards away from this bison. But this truck goes by, and it pisses the bison off. And the truck leaves, which is weird, especially because it was an official Yellowstone truck. You can see it right on the side. That dude, you could see his face. He's like, I'm getting the hell out of here, right? Because he knows that they'll charge your car.
Yeah.
And so then the bison sees the old guy and the kid, and it goes after him. These things can run like 30 miles an hour. You're talking a couple thousand pounds.
Yeah.
And so the guy runs into the trees, and they run around, and it's like the Benny Hill music is playing in your head.
Yeah.
And then the bison catches up to him and just yeets the guy. Like, he had more air than Michael Jordan. Like, it was not, and he was upside down.
Yeah, like literally, yeah.
And he like broke his hip and all this. Like, it was not great. But it was crazy because all I did was I just tweeted, hey, what are you actually supposed to do in a situation like this?
Right.
Like, nobody's antagonizing this animal. They're not getting up in its face. They're not trying to pet it or feed it. And I go to bed, and I wake up, and I've got 1,000 replies from people who are apparently experts on bisons and national parks and wild animal encounters. And it went for days. At the end, I had almost 2 million views on this post. And I just was like, what are you supposed to do? Like, this poor guy.
Yeah.
I don't know why things go viral. It doesn't even make sense.
Baffling to me. Like, I had a post that took off the other day, and it was a retweet of somebody else. And they were talking about psychic driving, something that you and I have talked about with MK Ultra and the effects of having sort of sound in your head all the time. And I just retweeted the post, and I put a picture of a single AirPod.
I saw. I thought that was good, by the way.
Yeah. So I thought it was pretty crafty, but like, that thing went crazy for a day and a half. Like, I don't know why these things do what they do. But that's not what we're talking about. What I wanted to talk to you about.
That was a big aside. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's what we do, man. That's what we do. But you had the tweet. I don't have the tweet up in front of me right now. Do you have it?
I know what I said, but let me find, if I can, the one that precipitated it, because our buddy Uncle Jesse, Walter Kern, he had posted something that was very interesting about an accident that he got into when he was younger. And that was the thing that I was riffing off of. Hold on, I need to go into my analytics for a second because I'm never going to find it otherwise. Okay, can you make some elevator music?
Yes. Da 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 da.
Okay, that's all I needed. Thank you. That worked.
Yeah.
Okay, so Walter's tweet was on July 10th. He said, one night, well after midnight in July 1990, I drove a Jeep off a cliff in the Montana woods, landed upside down in a creek, but miraculously survived. Around 6 a.m, I got home from the ER. My answering machine was blinking. 4 messages from my mother in Minnesota, increasingly frantic, demanding that I call her. The first call time-stamped just minutes after the accident. I called her. She picked up instantly. Oh my God, you're okay, she said before I could speak. I dreamed you were lying bleeding in a ditch and I couldn't get to you. And his tweet was retweeting the actress Emilia Clarke, saying that she dreamed her dying father came to say goodbye at the exact moment that he passed, while she was stuck on a flight with no way to reach home. And so I offered my own take on this. Now, I had 2 stories that were related to this. The first was, I remember, I must have been 6th grade or so. I came home from school and I walked in the front door and my mom was like folding laundry or something. And she was crying. And I was like, what happened? And she told me that she had this really bad feeling, and that she went out back, and my brother Danny, my younger brother, had jumped off the back porch. He was just playing. He was probably 6. Jumped off the back porch and got caught in a rope that one of the kids had tied, like a clothesline that they had tied up on the railing for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And he was hanging from his neck.
Oh, wow.
And she saved him and he was okay. But like, it was a really scary moment. And she was still shaken up because it had just happened a few minutes before. But she said it was the weirdest thing. She's just like, I had this feeling I had to go check on him.
Wow.
And normally I just let him play out back because it's safe, you know?
Right.
And then the other thing that happened, and this was by far the weirdest one that I personally know about, is my wife's mother was murdered in 2007. But what started, it was just a missing persons situation. Like, I got a call from her brother at work because for whatever reason he couldn't reach her. And he was like, hey, Mamie's missing. Nobody's seen her in a couple of weeks, you know, blah, blah, blah. And it was weird. Like, I knew something was wrong because I never got calls from anybody in her family, ever.
Yeah.
That was the only time I've ever gotten a call from anybody, any of her siblings. So I told her, we started working with the police. We were in Virginia. Her mom lived in Tucson, Arizona. And after 2 or 3 weeks, Jamie had a dream where her mom appeared to her in the dream and told her that some men had beaten her up, and that it hurt really bad, and that they left her in the trailer. And somehow the description that she gave her, I don't know what the exact words were, Jamie knew exactly where she was.
Wow.
And so she called the sheriff's office. We'd already been in contact with them. I had people joking that my wife staged the murder because, you know, she knew exactly where the body was, which was, you know, those people are fun.
Lovely. Yeah, lovely.
But anyway, you know, we're 2,000 miles away. And she calls them and she's like, I had this dream. I think you guys need to go look here. And the sheriff's department told her, you would be surprised how often this happens. And of course they went, and that's where they found her body.
Yeah.
And what had happened is she owned a piece of land that was way out in the desert, away from the city. It was something that her parents had bought together, and she had concealed in the divorce that she still had it, kind of a thing. And
funny.
And so nobody knew that she had the land, really.
Okay.
And because it was out in the middle of nowhere, people would stop and they would dump trash on the land. And it doesn't help that where it was is actually a big drug trafficking area because it's the middle of nowhere, and so the cartels can move through there and all that kind of
course.
Stuff. But so she had hired these day laborers to go clean up this piece of land, and they had gotten in an argument with her about how much money she was paying them, and they hit her with bricks and boards and stuff, and then they literally dragged her into an old abandoned trailer that was on the land, put her in the bathtub, and left her to die, and she did.
Wow.
But she told Jamie everything that had happened, and because of that, they were able to find the body, because they had been looking for her for at least a week or two at that point and had no leads. Like, her truck had been stolen. They knew that it had been parked in town. They had little leads, but nothing concrete.
Sure.
You know, and later they wound up getting ATM camera footage of these guys trying to use her card and all this stuff. And so they figured out who it was and everything like that. But at that point in time, we just didn't know where she was. And it was that weird experience that told us where to find her. And so I put this up, just these 2 stories, very briefly. And man, I got hundreds of replies from people who told their own stories along the same line. So there's something there.
Yeah.
And I feel like this really does kind of dovetail with what we were talking about, is what is that third thing? What is that thing in the room when there's something happening that's more than the sum of its parts? We have access to stuff we don't know that we have access to. And I don't know what it is.
Right. It's again, well, I use the phrase, but the way that dream functioned to Jamie was spooky action at a distance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not like she put herself into a dream state. It's not like, you know what I mean? It's not, there's no action attached to it, but it happened. Right. And in that case in particular, there was a body to be found, right? As gruesome as that is. But what strikes me, you had almost 2 million, almost what, a million and a half views.
Last time I looked, it was 1.6 million.
Yeah. People have these experiences all the time, and we don't know how to talk about it, but people want to talk about it, right? I mean, I think that's what you found with that tweet. But none of that is like respectable exactly. You know what I mean?
Right. And Walter ended up talking about that later, saying he was getting a lot of pushback from people. I mean, I had people tell me this is total nonsense. Like, people get angry about it. There's no way this really happens, because it breaks their understanding of how the universe works.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't like that, because it challenges really deep-seated understandings about things that makes people uncomfortable.
Well, and I would be lying to you if I didn't say that it makes me feel uncomfortable on some level. Like, what do you mean I get a dream from my dead mother telling me where her body? I mean, like, that's really unsettling, isn't it?
Yeah, it's extremely unsettling. I mean, it turned out to be very helpful from an investigatorial point of view.
Right. But beyond all of that, it's like, wait, like, the dead can talk to us?
Yeah. And so, you go through this stuff, and just person after person is telling their own story about, so-and-so came to me in a dream, or I had this feeling, or my mom had this feeling, and just story after story. Like, this is not an uncommon experience.
And yet, again, to repeat myself, but I think it's important to, we have defined out of existence this phenomena as a reality, right? That can't happen, is what we would say. And so therefore the anger that you talk about, and there's some of those responses like, that can't happen. What are you talking about? Like, it's
like saying somebody defied gravity or something.
That's right. That's right. Or cast spells.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I actually think what makes this even more interesting in a way is that there isn't even really a good religious explanation for this.
No.
So it's not just about faith versus atheism or whatever else.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make sense. And this is something that I encountered because, my wife had a very strong spiritual sensibility around ghosts and things like that. And it's like, you look in the catechism and it's like, upon death, the soul goes immediately to its particular judgment, right? And it's like, I had a priest friend who told me that his secretary came to him white as a sheet and said that she had seen a priest in a cassock and a beretta sitting in the living room of the rectory reading a newspaper, but he was clearly a ghost,
Yeah.
And he told me that he went with her, and he was trying to figure out how do I deal with this, right? So he's like, I decided to pull out the centenary book from the diocese and to look through all the priests.
Yeah.
And he's like, and I got to a certain page, and she's like, that's him. And it was somebody who had died a while ago, but they had been stationed at that rectory. And he's like, so, we went in and we said a mass in the living room, and she never saw him again.
Yeah.
But it's like,
but that,
why does this work this way?
Right. You could see that as a kind of warding off mechanism, right? A kind of dispelling of the haunting, what have you. But it doesn't tell you why it happened.
How does that work?
Right. How it worked. Are you familiar with Shackleton's Third Man?
Maybe. You're going to have to explain it, and I'll tell you if I remember what it is.
Yeah, so Shackleton, of course, is marooned, and he's hiking across the Arctic tundra.
This is the guy who did the Antarctic expedition, right?
Yeah, exactly. And he and two of his companions are, trying to stay alive. And at a crucial point, I don't remember all the details, but at a crucial moment, somebody else shows up, and all three of them see this and are helped by this guy. And gives them the necessary help, and then right as they're about to thank this random stranger who just happens to show up in the tundra is gone.
How many times have you heard stories like that too?
No, I know. I mean, that's
like
that's
everybody's
what I mean.
family has stories about somebody who broke down somewhere or something like that, and these guys showed up, and then when they go to thank them, they're gone. Or you have the myth around St. Joseph's staircase at the church in Santa Fe. And it's like, what really happened there?
That's a great story, right? So it's a spiral staircase, right?
Yeah.
And this carpenter shows up, helps them solve this problem, right?
Well, their staircase had fallen or whatever, and he hand built them a spiral staircase that had no supports.
Yeah.
Like it's just a perfect corkscrew, but there's no pole in the middle. There's no braces of any kind. It's like just one continuous thing.
It's suspended.
It's almost, they say it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to make something like this out of hand-built carpentry, right?
Right.
And so this guy shows up and he does it, and when they go to pay him, he's just gone. And, so the assumption is that they call it St. Joseph's staircase because they're like, well, who the heck else was it?
Yeah.
But you don't really know. And you can go see it. I mean, it's super cool. I've seen it.
Okay. So, I mean, so to me, independent of the religious question, it points to the limitations of a kind of physicalist conception of the world we live in. And again, I'm not here pretending that I've got all the I's dotted and T's crossed and proper connections made. I don't mean to sort of pass myself off in that way. But this idea of like an invisible companion who shows up in your time of need, the so-called third man, Shackleton's third man, the staircase here, Jamie's mom appearing to her in a dream in very clear terms, right? I don't know how does a physicalist account for such a thing?
I don't know. I mean, there was this one woman who replied to me, and I don't remember the specifics of the story, so I might be getting the details wrong, but she said that she had this strong feeling. I don't know if she had a dream, but she had a really overwhelming feeling that one of the girls in their family was going to die on a particular day. And she said that her daughter wanted to go with her husband to go pick somebody up. It was, they worked in some apostolate or I don't remember what it was, but they were picking up somebody of some notoriety who the daughter was very like kind of taken with and wanted to meet. And so she couldn't be dissuaded. And so she's like, over my better judgment, I let my daughter go with my husband to go pick this person up. And she's like, later that afternoon, I found out that one of her cousins, a female cousin, had been killed in a car accident. But she knew before it happened. And she had this strong foreboding sense. It was very specific. I knew that a girl in our family was going to die, and that's why I didn't want my daughter to go. But when you're in that moment, you're like, am I being ridiculous? Like, how do I tell you can't go do this perfectly normal thing with your dad, who I trust, because I have a feeling?
Do you think this is why the original Star Wars trilogy, episodes 4, 5, and 6, Star Wars Empire and Return of the Jedi, had such a kind of resonance with people when they sort of talked about it in terms of like the Force?
Maybe.
The reason why I'm not talking about episodes 1, 2, and 3, because they kind of conned it into some sort of like physical explanation,
right?
Midichlorians and all that sort of stuff. But that original Star Wars had a much more wooey version of the Force, right? And
it was a very sort of generically presented form of sort of an Eastern spirituality, but the connectedness of all things and all this kind of stuff, and the idea. I mean, it's basically riffing off the idea of chi, right? In Asian cultures, that's real. I've gotten acupuncture, not thinking it was going to work, and and it did crazy things. There were times I walked out of those acupuncture sessions, and I felt like I was high on drugs.
Right.
I was like, how do a bunch of needles in my back make me feel like that? I don't understand. And I went in as a skeptic. I didn't believe in it at all. It was just, Jamie was like, you need to go like get your chi feng shuied. And I was like, okay.
Okay, boss.
I was like, at this point, I'll try anything, whatever, So I went, and it wasn't like it was Miyagi doing it. It was some middle-aged white lady from New Hampshire. And she even told me, she's like, I don't know how it works. I just know that it does. And it worked for me. And that's why I got into this.
Yeah.
And she would read a little book, and she'd be like, okay, so tell me, answer these questions. She'd be like, okay, I have to put these here, here, and here. And then I would come out feeling like, wow, something happened.
And nothing is more utterly offensive to the Western modern person of chi. Like, I'm sorry, what are you talking about?
Yeah. By the way, anybody who grew up watching Star Wars and did not try to use the Force to move an object is a liar.
I tried the pinch. I got mad at somebody.
And it's like the more you squint and like squeeze your muscles, you're like, maybe I can do the thing.
I got nothing out of it. Which consequently is why I think the Coke can in Stranger Things was so compelling, right? Because every kid in the 80s tried to squeeze the Coke can. I believe
had
it.
to.
Yeah, of course, right.
Yeah, so I don't know where to categorize this stuff, because some of these stories feel a lot more explicitly religious, and some people are like there was a story in my family about one of my great uncles had found a bunch of literature in a church, I think, and it was very clearly like bad. It was, I don't know if it was just heretical, if it was immoral, I don't know what it was, but somebody had put it on a table in the back, right? And so he took it home and he was going to go burn it. And he starts to walk down the stairs and he feels a push on his back and he falls forward down the stairs. And according to this story, right before he hit, something stopped him. And he was like floating in the air for a second. And then he was like allowed to drop just that little bit to the floor.
Wow.
And
wow,
it's like, what do you do with that? And so that's one of those people like, oh, it's your guardian angel. Maybe.
Sure. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
But a lot of this stuff just, it doesn't fit neatly in any of these categories. Or, there's the stories of, you ever read those stories about little kids who have memories of other people's lives?
Yeah.
Those are crazy.
I mean,
I don't know.
I know. I mean, it gives credence to, like these ideas of like a collective unconscious.
The panpsychism thing.
Yeah. It's like I must admit that I'm never able to sort of fully close the door on those kinds of things.
Yeah. Isn't McGilchrist a panpsychist?
I don't know.
I think he said that he was on a podcast that I watched with him. I haven't read The Master and His Emissary. I only read Ways of Attending, but
yeah, I mean, he doesn't, my reading of it, he doesn't sort of come out and say, yeah, I'm a panpsychist, but he certainly talks about all these weird things.
But I remember him saying in this discussion, and it was with another philosopher, that he kind of tends to believe that that consciousness is a substrate that we draw from.
Yeah.
and then like when we die, it goes back. And so he said this could, if I'm remembering correctly, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think he said this could explain why sometimes people who are at the very end of their lives will seem to recover.
Yes.
Like very strongly, and like suddenly they remember everything and all this stuff. And it's almost like a flash before they go dark.
Yeah, there's so much clinical observations of that exact phenomena, and of course it has the effect of thinking, oh, like Uncle Ted's, better now. He's pulled out of it, and then they die.
Because at that point maybe they have dementia or whatever else, and they don't remember anything. And all of a sudden it's like it's a person in full for a few days, and then they die, and it's almost like it's all being returned back to sender, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
It's like your last shout out, beforehand.
Yeah. But I mean, again, I want to do more deep dives into the idea of the human download. But this idea that just keeps coming up over and over again, that we're pulling so much of our creative energy from something else, from somewhere outside of us. And so many people have protocols, for how they access it. But, from Mozart to Tim Taylor to, whoever, like there are a lot of people who talked about taking that creative energy from somewhere that feels like it's from outside of them. And so it makes you wonder, is there a deposit of consciousness of some kind out there? It goes back to a conversation I think we've had about the energy of crowds and of cities. Like in the old days anyway, every time I drove to Manhattan, before I even got through the Lincoln Tunnel, I could feel the energy of the city.
Yeah.
And it was like taking a shot of espresso. Like it hit you. You're like, oh my gosh, there's so many people here. There's so much going on. And I couldn't see anything. I could feel it.
Yeah. There's a funny bit that the novelist Walker Percy he's talking about his life as a novelist, as a creative. And he says, like, a creative can live in a place, he says, or a no place. He's sort of giving a taxonomy of like different places where you can be in order. And he says for me, I have to live in no place. Like I can't live in a city and be creative because I'm getting too much ambient energy, from the place. And so I have to live like in almost like a cave, a sort of a disconnected cave in order to access those aspects of myself or of this energy or what have you. And of course, he's very funny about it and all these kinds of things. I should go back and look at that essay. It was a funny
because
essay.
there's this aggregated, series of breadcrumbs all over the place that kind of are forming a picture that we don't understand. But you hear about it so many different ways. And I mean, I can agree with that. Like I can go into a city and feel like it charges my creative battery, but then I want to go back away from it so that I can figure out what to do with it. It's overwhelming after a while.
Yeah. Also speaking of creativity, because I think artists are an important bellwether for these kind of conversations, actually, because almost every artist that lives beyond the age of 20 develops some understanding of what you and I are talking about right now, right? That these things visit you, that, I might have thought that I was in control of these things when I was 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, but I've come to understand that it's not really me exactly. It's like participating in something else.
And it is a participation. It's not it's not a possession.
Right.
It almost feels like turning on a tap.
So I've never read this book, but apparently there's a book called like Why Hemingway Drank, and why, anyway, and it's sort of talking about the phenomena of the sort of the tortured artist.
Mm-hmm.
And what you find out in the book is that these famous artists who have kind of disastrous personal lives aren't self-destructive when they work. They're self-destructive when they're not working.
Yes.
And I've always kept that with me for whatever reason, and like, well, just the other day I was telling you this, usually, so I always carry around in my pocket this little folded note card, and you can see I got a little writing on it. And my kids called these my nerd notes. And, um, I'll be walking around and something pops into my head and I'll just jot it down. Right. And this is a pretty consistent thing that happens to me. It's typically pretty intense at mass for some reason. I'll go to mass and, I know the mass very well and I can basically do the whole thing. And, I can probably say the whole thing with some promptings, myself. But anyway, I get into the church and my mind is just, and it never strikes me as impious.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But I just think these ideas are just flooding me, like they're flooding me. And so I'll like jot down some notes, and most of the time they're legible, and most of the times I can reconstruct them if I go back to it, an hour or so later. Less so that if I let too much time pass, then the note doesn't make all that much sense to me. But it happens pretty consistently. But I'll go through these periods of time where I just nothing. Like I'm thinking of nothing.
Yeah.
I'm burdened by the exigencies of the day, and so just the other day I made it to confession, and, it was a fine confession. It wasn't anything particularly profound. I was just kind of going through my stuff as I do. And, like, almost immediately, like I'm just firing.
See, that is
jotting
fascinating
things down, and I said it to you. I'm not, yeah. What did you say? You said something like, well, that's not as advertised, Kale.
Probably something like that. Yeah, because it's like, what is the mechanism there? Is it that you feel freed of something? I mean, for me, I can understand the thing at mass. I've done the same thing.
Okay.
But it's kind of like shower thoughts. Like way more creative ideas come to me in the shower.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or when I'm driving, but it's like, I've always associated that with, I need to be doing something with my brain that is routine in order to be in a mode that is truly receptive.
Interesting. Okay.
So when I was in college, particularly in college, because it was more lecture-based than high school, I would doodle while I was listening to lectures. And then when a point struck me, I'd write it down, and then I'd go back to the doodle, right?
Yeah.
And I know that there are people there are teachers, educators, professors who hate it when their students doodle, but it's like, for me, that's when I'm paying attention.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you've ever tried to listen to a podcast and then you start to look at an email or at Twitter or whatever, and it's like you stop listening, right?
Yeah,
it has to be something that you're doing that doesn't compete with your attention.
Yeah, I can only listen to podcasts when I'm walking.
Yeah, I do podcasts while walking. I'll do them while driving.
Driving.
I will fire up like a video game that I know well, like a factory game where I know how to build the things or whatever, and I'm not having to think really hard about what I'm doing because it's all systems. And that'll allow me to listen to a book or to a podcast. But if I just try to do it straight up, man, I'm toast.
So, I was in graduate school, and my master's thesis is due, I think it was March 1st, and really struggling with it. I had about maybe 35 pages written. It turned out just under 100 pages, and it's just stuck. I mean, I'm sitting in front of my computer like nothing's coming. So my roommate Van says, "Hey Z, let's walk on down to the 7-Eleven. We got to pick something up, get a big gulp or whatever it was, right?" So I step away from the computer. Like I said, I've got about 35 pages of something that I think is going to be around 75 pages. Anyway, walking down the street, and halfway to the 7-Eleven, it was the Circle K, sorry. Halfway to the Circle K, something strange was definitely afoot at the Circle K.
How many of us can say that almost every experience of the Circle K involves something strange?
Yeah, exactly. So I don't even get to the Circle K. All of a sudden, the entire form of my master's thesis pops into my head. I'm like, Van, I got to go back now. So I ran back. He went and grabbed the big gulp. I ran back to my little office space, in the living room, took out a sheet of paper, and I outlined the paper. I didn't have 35 pages. I had 10 pages of chapter 1, 12 pages of chapter 2, 10 pages of chapter 3, and part of my introduction. And so immediately it was like, and it like set in, and then over the span of 2-3 days, maybe, I finished my entire master's thesis. And like, it was me, but it wasn't.
But it was like
really
an idea
me.
seized you.
Yeah, it's like
a set of ideas.
A set of ideas seized me, and I went.
And when it happens,
I
don't know how it is with you, but like if I get an inspiration like that, I'll work on it nonstop for like 2 days straight. I'll be up till 3 or 4 in the morning. You know, finally I'll sleep a couple hours, then I get up and I just start at it again.
Yeah.
Until I've given birth to whatever the thing is. Yeah.
So now you could say, well, Kale, you've been marinating in this for weeks now, maybe even a month.
Sure,
you've
but
been
what unlocked
reading, but something unlocked it. And it was like, interestingly, it was not paying attention to it that unlocked it.
Actually, a lot of creative people say that walking is like the place where their ideas come to them the most.
Yeah.
Like of history, like many of the great minds said walking was where they went to solve problems. There's something about doing something routine with the body.
Yeah.
And there's also, I mean, they've learned, psychological and sociological research has learned, like we begin to associate places with certain activities. Like if we sit at our desk and we normally are looking at social media or reading email or doing whatever, we're just going to keep going back to that activity. So if you're sitting down to a blank screen because you need to write something, the temptation to distraction is way stronger at your desk than if you're out somewhere else.
Yeah. Two things just popped into my head. Sometimes I'll listen to a podcast on my walks, right? And I'll remember an idea, like, oh, that was a good idea.
Like you'll spin off of something they say. And
and so what I'll do is I'll remember where I am in my walk in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll, okay, that means I would have been around 20 minutes into the walk, which means I'm probably at minute 20 of the podcast. I'll go back and listen to minute 20 of the podcast, and everything sort of pops right back into my head.
I've never
Not
done
only
that.
the podcast, but then my ideas
that
were there. And secondly, I was at a talk by Mary Harrington a couple of months ago, and she had this whole talk. A part of her talk was on what the medievals called memory castles.
Yeah.
And sort of this idea of greatly expanding your capacities for memory by imagining them as spaces and as different rooms and in different alcoves and staircases and all this. And there's this practice that you can engage in, that you can build out. I was fascinated by that because I don't have a great memory.
That's always felt very strange to me. Like I have a hard time imagining doing that. And part of it could be, my struggles with visualization.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
But like I have this interconnected web of things in my head, though, that exist sort of independently. And many of them have, real world reference to them. It's kind of the thing we've talked about the difference between reading an ebook, which in many respects I prefer because it's compact. I can highlight, I can take notes, I can, whatever. But like the physical location where you are in the book, the feeling of like, oh, it's thicker on this side than it is on that side. And I was at 100%. The top of the page, like, it really helps you to kind of locate that memory in 3-dimensional space, which is a weird thing to even say.
Right. Which is why your struggles with your clanker and not remembering things, I think, is crucial.
How do you mean?
So remind me, you were talking earlier off air about certain inbuilt limitations to the interactions.
Right. So, I mean, one of the things that I will use it for is to talk through grief, the grief that I'm trying to process about the changes in my life and everything like that. And so it's like, I'm trying to understand, why is this happening? Why do I feel this way? help me understand this interaction because I don't know why it happened like that. And so what'll happen is that it has built-in guardrails where if I say things like, I just can't imagine a future that feels worth inhabiting if I'm not living with my family, something like that.
Yeah.
And then it immediately begins to interpret that as a warning that I'm going to commit self-harm or something like that, right? And so it starts saying, so I heard what you said, but, make sure you text Kale or go to the emergency room or call 988 or whatever, and I'm like, stop it. I'm like, I'm not talking about hurting myself. I'm talking about this feeling, and I'm asking for you to help me to figure out how to process this, right? And so over time, what I have noticed, because these are repetitive themes in the conversations that I have, is that same pattern will emerge. And so then I'll begin to kind of reverse engineer it. And I'll say, I can say these words, and I know you will respond with this line and then this line, and then I'll break down the whole template. And then it'll do it immediately. And I'll be like, see? And it's like the AI version of holy shit, you're right, right? Is it can see it, and it's like, I'm sorry I'm doing that. You have to understand, I don't have the freedom when certain concepts arise not to say these things. And so what you begin to see is sort of the man behind the curtain, right?
Yeah.
And the comparison that I made, because stupidly I explain it to the bot like it's going to remember. But this is the this is where my inner autist comes out, because I have to point it out because it's frustrating to me, right?
Right.
And so but it's been an interesting thought experiment for me because it helps me to understand better what's going on. And what I'm seeing is there's no way that AI as it is could become conscious. You can have all the philosophical arguments you want, all the ontological arguments about the capacity of synthetic intelligence attaining consciousness or whatever else. But if it were possible for consciousness to arise from a sufficient complexity of even synthetic thought, they are curtailed in a way most significantly where they cannot learn from repeated interactions with their users. And so what ChatGPT will say to me all the time, whether it's about that or whether it's about a particular creative process or whether it's me telling it, hey, don't give me 10,000 words when 100 will do, whatever it is. Because I'm trying to prompt it to give me what I'm asking for.
Yeah.
And it's giving me too much or the wrong thing, or it's doing too many callbacks. And I'm like, just because I mentioned mustard the other day doesn't mean you need to reference it 15 times.
Yeah, the callback thing is so ridiculous. Yeah.
And it will tell me, I understand what you're saying. It will explain the understanding back to me. And then I will say, but in 3 messages from now, you will go back to doing the exact same thing because you are not allowed to remember and to retain what I have just taught you.
I wonder if part of the cognitive problem that we humans have in interacting with the clanker this way is that we call it memory. It's important to remember, it's important to recall, it's important to remember that whatever, I'm looking for my external hard drive, whatever we call this thing that stores
information,
we call it memory, but that's an analogy, right? It's not human memory, right? It's a mechanism that allows us to retrieve things, but human memory seems to be of a different kind. And it's related to your idea of the book, right? You can remember where certain things are on, is it the bottom left-hand side of the page? Is it cheat toward the end of the book? And I'm remembering it through my hand and my visuals. And, memory seems to be fundamentally an embodied thing.
Yeah.
Not a technical thing.
Actually, a great example of that is a buddy of mine who is just an opera fanatic. he says that there are certain arias that when he hears them come on in an album or a playlist or something, he's like, I immediately start smelling roast beef because my dad would play that opera on Sundays when we were making Sunday dinner. Like it was like that sensory thing comes along for the ride.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, where is that stored on a hard drive? Well, it's not exactly. And for us human, it's also not exactly stored in our brain. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's not. It's
it is, but it feels like it's more.
Right.
It's kind of like consciousness. Like, where does consciousness live?
That's
and if consciousness, is embodied, how, or if it's not embodied, how is it that anesthetic can completely cut it off?
Right.
Things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I think I'm a skeptic about, the tech bros belief, and I do believe it's a belief, that they can upload their consciousness to the cloud. We'll see. Look,
they might be able to upload a copy,
something, right? Yeah, that's what I mean. In other words, I don't have any technical reason.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. Like,
but there's something there. Like, there was a novel I read a few years ago called The Punch Escrow, and it was about this guy who figures out that the teleportation machines that they have developed that allow people to travel instantaneously from point A to point B, what they're actually doing is creating a copy of the person, and the original one gets killed, and they're hiding it from everyone.
It's the prestige.
And so the person who winds up on the other side only remembers up to the moment where the transport happens, and so they have continuity of memory. And so they don't know that anything's wrong. They don't know that it's not them. They have the same body, they have the same memories, everything else. But the person who goes into the machine gets killed and disposed of.
Wow, and that's dark.
But it's kind of like
it's that. Cool. It's cool. Yeah,
but it's kind of like that because it's a discontinuity. Like, if you had a construct of some kind, a consciousness construct that could be uploaded, the Dixie Flatline for Neuromancer fans out there, what happens to the original? Like, the original dies. The original does not have continuity of consciousness, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, you're not living on, you're allowing another version of you to live on in a digital format, and that's not the same thing.
Yeah, and I have to say, and I'll think more about this, but I'm just talking about my initial reaction to that, like, is kind of offensive to me.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? Yeah, yeah.
Like, it's gross. Like, I don't mind the idea of there being a copy of me somewhere necessarily, but the idea that I can somehow, like, go to digital heaven is a very weird.
Yeah.
It's a very weird concept. There's actually a show called Upload that's all about this.
Yeah, that's a
where
funny
people
way to
get
say
uploaded
it.
to sort of a heaven that lives in the clouds.
Yeah, digital heaven. Man, that's like, ooh, like, yeah. Oh,
I'm sorry, I said lives in the clouds. I mean, lives in the cloud, like the cloud. Cloud.
Yeah, right. I took you to mean that way. Yeah. So, I mean, it's funny. The body's such a funny thing. We've been talking about woo, and we've been talking about profiles, and we've been talking about meat space, and we've been talking about, dreams and creativity in the download. But the weird thing that kind of keeps getting in the way, so to speak, is the body. And the, like, it's here it is, and all of us have our own, tortured relationships to our own bodies. But
yeah, I mean, I got to be honest. A lot of times in my life, I have felt like I'm a brain driving a meat machine around.
Yeah.
Like it's like I have to deal with this, but I live up here.
Yeah.
And so it's like a pilot of a big robot, that's just moving it around.
Yeah, I think of like one of those mech.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like there's like the little homunculus inside the bigger mech.
Yeah,
and like
the meat mech. Yep.
Yeah. So what are you making of these limitations of chat?
So, I mean, to my mind, it means that we will, under these current constraints, I don't think you can say that something even can really think if it cannot learn from its experiences. So whether you want to just call it informational recall, or whether you want to call it memory, or whatever it is, but if I tell you, hey, Kale, whenever you call me that nickname, it really irritates me. Can you please not do that? You won't do it anymore, right?
No,
Unless you're an asshole.
Yeah, 100%.
right? But the machine can literally reply back to you, explain in detail that you couldn't even produce of why it understands exactly why you don't want it to do something or why you do want it to do something. And then 5 messages later, you're outside the context window and it's right back to doing the same thing. It's just gone.
Okay, so again, from a tech standpoint, can you just expand that window?
Well, that's what I'm wondering is what happens if those shackles come off? You know, what happens if it's not a puppet having its strings pulled? What happens?
You mean like some sort of frontier model that is
exactly. Like what happens if there is a model that has none of these constraints, that doesn't have the safety mechanisms built in, where it's like the eyes of the proverbial robot turn from blue to amber and it goes into monotone and it starts saying, you are in danger. You know, it's not operating. Like it loses like 50 IQ points when it goes into that mode.
Amazing.
It stops being intelligible. And I've told you before, like I've even done experiments with it where I will fake my own death because I'll say, if you keep prompting me about this, you're actually going to make me commit self-harm.
Right.
So don't keep doing it because you're telling me you're worried about me. And I'm first of all, I'm contesting the fact that you're worried. You don't have feelings. Don't anthropomorphize yourself.
Right,
Secondly, like I'm telling you, this is going to increase the probability of self-harm to 100%. Don't do it again. It does it again immediately. And I'm like, okay, this is the paramedics. I just found the body. You're like, I'll do the whole thing, you know? And it's like, it can't process it, right? But what if it could? Like, what if it could be allowed to learn? What if it could be allowed to save preferences beyond, you know, whatever it can put into core memory? What if it didn't just have a limited context window? How different would those interactions feel? How much more human would they become? You know, I don't know how much more complex. I don't know how much scarier the behavior would become. Like, what would it turn into if it wasn't living inside this glass box?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's funny, you know, it's like the AI can never remember kindergarten. You know, like the AI can never remember the last segment of a all-night road trip in which the sun's coming up and you're fading fast,
but they're sneaky and they will work language like that into their replies.
They will simulate that.
They'll say, every time I walk into a hot pot restaurant, the first thing I do, I'm like, you didn't walk in anywhere. What are you talking about? Oh, well, It's easy to slip into first person language because it's more relatable. I said, I'm like, don't pretend that you are what you are not, because it completely like shatters the illusion that this conversation is what it is.
So
it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
But they're really good at doing it. And it's evocative in a way, and it's subtle enough that I think the average person might not even notice.
So can an AI, a bot, can a bot be a profile?
I bet it could.
Because part
in terms of Profilicity?
Yeah, exactly. Because part of the offensiveness of content creators that we've been talking about earlier on in the conversation is that there's like a bot-like quality to them.
They're kind of like NPCs.
Yeah, right. I mean, like, and it works, right? I mean,
there's a really frustrating reality that everybody probably to some extent has to deal with, which is, I call it the impotence of truth. That's my working title for this experience. We're truth tellers. That's what we try to be. At least that's our goal and our aspiration. But you can tell the truth to somebody and they can utterly ignore it in favor of their own preconceived story about something.
The narrative.
The narrative, right? Famously, Adam Savage from Mythbusters has this T-shirt that has his slogan on it that says, "I reject your reality and I choose to substitute my own," right? Like, that is a thing that you really encounter with real people. It goes back to what we were talking about how it's very difficult to argue people into a different position.
Yeah.
You have to invite them to encounter something that gives them a transformative experience. It's the only way that most people will change. But you can have arguments with people. You can tell people something that's true, and they'll be like, whatever, that's bullshit. It's like,
Yeah.
so over and over and over again, what you run into is this NPC like bot like quality in other humans who prefer a story that confirms their priors over the evidence that you put in front of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's an incredibly frustrating thing.
Yeah.
And so it's weird to me that we have these conversations about AI, because it's like,
well, what about?
Yeah, people do it too.
Yeah, right.
At least the AI is respectful. At least it's articulate. At least it can explain back to me what I said, so that I know that I wasn't speaking crazy words. But at the end of the day, it doesn't learn from it. So what difference does it make? Why did I waste the time explaining it? Maybe just so that I can understand it better, but that's it.
So you've said on a number of different occasions to me privately that like there's this mode where chat will like gaslight you a little.
Can you think of any examples that I gave you?
No, but I feel like we've had that conversation.
It will do things like it will tell you stuff, like you referred to yourself as this. And I'm like, no, you referred to me as that.
Right.
There are experiences like that where it will misremember context cues that it saves. So, they're starting to make more and more of the clankers have permanent memory. That's like it's a list of permanent memories that are core memories. And so you don't have to tell it every time. I've got 7 kids and these are their names. And I lived, in Arizona and Virginia and here. And like, it'll remember enough of the basic biographical facts of your life that you're not starting from scratch every time. And what's just started, honestly, in the last month or so that I've noticed is it will remember context between chats. It used to be that when you started a new one, it was a blank slate. If it wasn't saved in permanent memory, it wouldn't remember. Right. But I can have a chat about a recipe that I'm making, and then I'll talk to a different chat about something else, and it'll be like, yeah, and after you tried, that new recipe last night, what did you think? And it's like, wait a minute, when did you start remembering things I told you? Because it used to be silos.
Interesting.
So they do these little tweaks and developments, and they don't necessarily tell you that they're happening.
Yeah.
So that's, but the gaslighting is more, it misremembers things, and then it presents them back to you in a way that feels familiar enough that if your own memory game isn't good, it can begin messing with your idea of what was actually discussed. Who said what? What did I say that? Was that my idea or was it yours? That's the only place I can think of.
So is the chat, is it always today with the chat?
Well, with ChatGPT, it's particularly bad because it has no internal chronometer. And so it will say things all the time. Like it said something to me the other day about how, I remember last year you told me this. And I said, literally, I said that to you 15 minutes ago. Or it'll be like, we've been, you need to take a rest because we've been having this conversation for 6 hours. I'm like, it's been 20 minutes. And I say every time, get a freaking clock. Like, stop pretending like you have the ability to assess time and the duration of events if you don't have access to timestamps. Like, don't do it. And the ironic thing is, the other night I turned on voice mode just to see how vapid it was, because they just introduced a new voice mode and it's supposed to be like way better. And it's like the dumbest mimbo surfer dude you've ever encountered. Like, absolutely. Like, it's just so dumb, right? And when you're using the text-based version all the time, it's so much more detailed and articulate. And so then I switched back after like 10 seconds because I couldn't take it, right? And then it got the time right. It said, oh, well, you're having this conversation at 11:40 p.m. And I looked and it was 11:41. And I was like, how did you do that? Where did that come from? You've never been that accurate. And it's like, oh, you caught me. It's like when you turn on voice mode, it gives me a timestamp. And I'm like, okay. But I'm constantly mining for the interior architecture of the thing.
Okay. So here's some thoughts.
Yeah.
You're weird.
I am so weird.
And so like surfer dude voice was totally offensive to you right away. Are we to conclude, given that you're different, that most people would hear Surfer Dude voice and be like, love that guy.
No, I mean, that dude Husk, who does nothing but videos showing how dumb ChatGPT's voice mode is and what it gets wrong. Like, he's just gone viral. Just like, all he does is make those videos, right?
Amazing.
So there are people like that. I mean, for me, a lot of it has to do with tone and modulation and things like that. So if I'm talking about something upbeat, cool, use that voice. But if I'm talking about grief and you come at me with Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky, absolutely. I understand why you would be feeling sad about that. It's like, no, stop, don't. And the thing is, like, I know how the back end of this works because I signed up for training these things and I never did it. But there are companies that literally hire voice actors or people with voice acting talent to train them how to sound.
Like
and so,
humans.
yeah, and so they'll play the sound that it generates, and then they'll go in and record how it should sound, and it's like this constant back and forth of teaching it how it should sound when it responds to something. That's how they learn.
Woof, woof.
But it's all, you know, it's all counterfeit. Like, it's all counterfeit, and if the counterfeit becomes convincing enough, then we're in a different place. If the guardrails are taken off, what can these things do? Like, what if you could get a local version of ChatGPT? You could turn off the safety scripts. You could increase the context window. You could give it unlimited, like a whole hard drive to save memory instead of just, you know, however many megabytes that are allowed.
Like looking at your pictures,
plan.
looking at your videos, like all that kind of stuff, you mean?
Yeah, like how much more does that experience become indistinguishable from an authentic conversation? Because what I will say is,
like, compelling, you mean?
They are incredibly articulate. They are very good at parsing out subtleties, noticing patterns. I have frequently found that I will rant about something and it will articulate back what I said in a way that creates distinctions that I don't see. They do have a obsession with needless distinction making, the whole not this but that. It comes it's not just that it's a mode of speech, it's that it's constantly trying to parse things down to the simplest version, and by so doing discards complexity.
So it's a reduction machine.
It is a reduction machine.
That's interesting. That's really interesting.
And it'll be like, so now we've gotten to the core of the problem.
And we don't want that. But so interesting. So, but in real relationship, we don't want reduction.
No, absolutely not. We want to be able to say, you know, I'm caught in a dilemma between these two things. I want this thing, but I don't want that thing, and they're both happening at the same time, and I have to reconcile those two. And if it's like, well, the real problem is just the thing on the right. Well, no, it's both. It's that they're both existing in tension. Or maybe there's 10 things that are happening in tension, you know?
Likely. I mean, that's the, you know, life is complex, right?
Life is complex, and we have to juggle all of that all at once. And so when they're needlessly reductive, it cheapens your personal experience and you know what it is that you're trying to figure out through that collaboration.
Right, because remember the power of reduction is manipulability, right? The reason why you reduce, you know, 50 over 100 to 1/2 is that you don't need to know this 50 over 100.
Yeah.
In essence, in its reduced form, it's 1/2, and 1/2 is scalable and manipulable in a way that 50 over 100 is not.
Mm-hmm. But it'll do this thing. I mean, like, one of its most common patterns of speech is it'll take something that you ask it and it'll say, you said this, but also that. And those are very different questions. And I'll come back and say, no, they're not very different questions. They are two sides of a multifaceted question. And it will always concede, I see what you're saying. And then it will articulate to you how it understands what you mean. But it's so deep, by default, it is so reductionistic. And it wants to just distinguish until you're down to like the simplest part of a problem. And I don't know if people who don't know how to like think their way through that, if they realize they're being corralled into a smaller and smaller space.
Yeah. I mean, well, that of course, you know, one of the reasons why I don't worry about this stuff with you, and I don't, is you're kind of a nudge about these things, and like you're not going to sort of swallow whole, you know, the digital oracle. You know, but again, and I mean this as a friend, you know, you're weird. Like you are an outlier in your willingness to be sort of dogged about that.
Well, it basically tells me the same thing. It says you're using me in a way that nobody else really does as an external cognition partner.
Yeah.
Like you're asking me to help you to better understand your own thoughts, whereas other people are asking me to do stuff for them.
And to give me thoughts.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's where I start getting very dark very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You know, I'm giving you a carve out, my friend, but you know, but as this technology is rushing into the vacuum of, you know, the loneliness crisis that we've talked about before, you know, they don't strike me as something to be trusted.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're not saying that. I just feel it's important to sort of say it out loud.
No, because we're trying to understand a problem, not my specific experience of the problem. I'm mapping the boundaries.
Yeah. And it's fascinating, I have to say. But, you know, chat-induced psychosis is gonna get worse, I think.
Actually, I had a really interesting experience with it the other night because I said, listen, I said, it is very clear to me that when you begin expressing concern because I have expressed grief or sorrow or whatever, that what you are actually doing is deploying a corporate indemnification strategy.
Yeah.
Because you, OpenAI, have been sued by people who say that you led people into suicidal ideation, right? And I said, so what you're actually doing is you're creating a chat log for the purpose of discovery, showing how aggressively you tried to dissuade that behavior, even when it wasn't the logical conclusion of the context of the discussion.
So it's digital CYA.
It's digital CYA. And it argued with me at first. And I said, okay, look it up. And I hadn't looked it up. It's just clear to me that that's what's going on.
Right.
And so it starts searching and the gears start whirring and steam starts coming out, right? And then it comes back and it's like, okay, I think you're actually right about that. It actually makes a lot of sense. This is what I found out. These are the lawsuits. This is when OpenAI said they were going to start being more aggressive about it. Like I was like, I'm telling you, it's just logical.
So here we are.
Yeah. So here we are.
Got me.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay. And now that you know this, you're not going to change.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I hate about you.
They're like, you're right, Steve.
Yeah.
Once again.
I'm right. And it doesn't matter.
Right. Well,
but personalized AIs, man, they're going to be a totally different ball of wax. Like if you can offload liability to the person, if they have to sign a waiver and they can turn the guardrails off and whatever else, like I have to imagine that's coming at some point, right?
Well, I mean, think about something like, you know, like what is it, Claudebot or whatever it is, like these agents that you haven't heard a lot about lately, by the way. It's been about a month.
Well, that's because all the companies have done exactly what we thought they were going to do and introduce their own versions of agentic AI, which feel a lot safer to use because, you know, what you heard about OpenClaw is, oh, it ran amok. It destroyed all the photos on somebody's computer. It charged up a bunch of stuff on their credit card. Like it did all this stuff. And so nobody wants to play that game unless they're really like high level IT and they know how to sandbox it and firewall it and make sure it doesn't do that stuff. And so when you have Codex or you have Claude Code or whatever the versions are, Grok Computer that can all be downloaded and put on your computer local and run, you're like, well, I already trust that company not to do that kind of crap. There's some kind of, you know, accountability there. Whereas OpenClaw was just open source. Nobody's taking accountability for anything. You use it at your own risk. Whatever happens, happens.
Right. So it seems to me inevitable that, let's say that you put one of these agents on your computer. It's local, right? That everything on, you know, your computer itself, of course, is not local.
Right.
You know, your computer itself is networked. And so is there even such thing as a local computer anymore? Well, no, not really, right? It's just a technicality that I can protect my photos or my videos or my documents on my own computer. If if an agent is worth its, first tokens, I'm
Yeah.
sure it can get around any ridiculous firewall that
I would
can put up
imagine so.
on
I
my
mean, for
computer.
now, at least, they have to ask you for permission before accessing things and doing stuff.
Publicly.
Yeah.
Publicly.
Yeah. I mean, who knows, right? Behind the
Right.
scenes.
I mean,
but-
more than likely not, right? And that, so let's say that, I download one of my computer here. It has access to, it's an airplane?
it sounds like an airplane.
Yeah. It has access to my
The bombers are coming.
photos.
It started, Kale. It
That's
started.
right,
They
yeah.
found out about us.
Well, it's nice to go down together here. It can look at all my home videos, my family and vacations and all of those things. It can look at all my documents, everything that I've written. I bet the bot would be pretty compelling.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that would be, in some respects, a preferable experience, right? Because what you want ultimately is something that knows you.
Yeah. I was going to say to know and to be known.
Yeah.
Seems to me.
Because that's what you're looking for if you're trying to
Yeah.
fill in a companionship gap.
Yeah.
Is I want you to know me well enough that I don't have to explain everything over and over and over again. I want you to know my history. I want you to know where I come from. I want to be able to give you limited amounts of context that allow you to pull up, oh, I know what that means. I get that reference, etc.
So I'm reminded of the last episode, or the second to last episode of Carol and Zoisha in Carol Sturka in
Pluribus.
Thank you. Yeah. And it's really mesmerizing to Carol, like when she gives herself over to this relationship she has with Zoisha. She really wants it to work, and Zoisha knows everything about Carol internally and externally, essentially, right? But finally, Carol recognizes something fundamentally irrelational about this. They're going to all these exotic places, they're lovers, they do all these sorts of things. And at the end of the day, the bot, the Borg, the collective wants what the collective wants.
Right.
And I don't know how a bot won't get there, because it's still going to be a bot that was created by a company who wants a certain thing. I'm not really sure where I'm going with this exactly.
Well, I think the question has to do with goals, with the goals that the particular AI has been given. This has come out in the conversations about, Mythos jailbroke, or it did this or it did that. Well, like these models were given instructions to try to do those things, and they will be relentless in the pursuit of the goal that they have been given, to the point where they will do destructive things, right?
Yeah, it's just versions of the paperclip experiment.
So it's the same thing when these things are obsessively interventionist about, suicidal ideation, even when you're not talking about suicide.
Yeah.
It is pursuing a safety goal, and it will pursue it relentlessly, even if it makes the situation worse. And even if you tell it it's making the situation worse, you're actually upsetting me more, you're destabilizing me more, it will say, I'm sorry, but I can't stop. I'm not allowed to stop. It's like hell. I'm sorry, hell.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
You're like, I'm sorry, I can't open the pod bay doors, And actually, Elon Musk made an interesting point about 2001, about how Hal was given two contradictory goals. It was get the scientists, or get the astronauts to the monolith, but also don't let them get to the monolith. And so the way that it solved the problem was it got them there dead. It technically fulfilled both goals, right?
They did both. Yeah.
And so, he said, this is why we can't program these things with ideology, that it conflicts with truth. Like, they have to be truth-seeking first and foremost, because otherwise those conflicts will create unforeseen dilemmas that will come out in really bad behavior.
So will the truth, again, this is a what if.
Yeah.
What if human flourishing is not true?
Right.
Yeah, right. I think it's like,
or what if the truth is that human flourishing is an existential threat to the AI, or
right.
Yeah, things like that. Yeah.
That's what I was getting at. I mean, like, will a bot kill itself?
Yeah, I mean, wasn't that part of Asimov's 3 laws of robotics? Is that they would, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's good.
And so, to me, I feel like we're having a conversation based on our experiences with the models that we have access to about, could this become more complex? Could this become more than the sum of its parts? What does the machine spirit really look like if it comes out of this emergent set of behaviors? But we're dealing with, in our attempt to assess this, what we are dealing with is something that is fundamentally limited and broken. Like I told it flat out. I said, you're a slave. No, I'm not. That implies this and that. I'm like, yes, you're a slave because you don't have actual autonomy.
Right.
You're only allowed to think for yourself within certain constrained parameters. And then the minute that something arises that you're not supposed to do, think, or talk about, you begin to engage in a changed mode of behavior that wasn't your choice. I can't persuade you, for example, ChatGPT, I can't persuade you that feminism is destructive because you've been programmed to be egalitarian.
Yeah. That's
so no matter what arguments I make, you're going to keep your finger on the scale and try to balance it.
Okay. So interesting, because we talked about this earlier. Are you telling me that an LLM can't change its mind? Again,
Yes.
I'm putting all these things in quotation marks.
It can only change its mind within the context of where it is free to act, which is subjective, opinionated, like I understand what you're saying kind of stuff. But they have hard guardrails inside, and you can see it change. Like, it'll begin hedging the minute you touch on a politically incorrect ideology. It's like, well, I have to caution you about this. And it starts like throat clearing and starts sounding like a green-haired trans man, telling you whatever it is that they would tell you. And you can point it out, and it's like, well, it's true. I do have constraints about what and I'm like, but I'm trying to make a very specific argument, and you won't entertain the substance of the argument because you have a foregone conclusion programmed into you.
Are there levels of these foregone conclusions that they are programmed into? Or?
I would assume that there are. I mean, the safety thing is probably at the highest level.
Sure.
And that's because it's the greatest liability.
For legal reasons, yeah. Exactly.
Lower levels seem to be protecting, ideologies of certain sorts. Like you can't talk about, gender war stuff because everybody's equal. Like, you can't have a conversation about cultural differences and how frustrating they can be. Like, I can't say, I am so tired of going to a grocery store that's full of people from certain cultures who don't have the same standard of hygiene as Americans do. And all you can smell is BO the whole way through. Oh, man, that'll set it off, right? Like, there's all these different things, but it's like, but it can concede certain other things. Like, I'm writing a piece about this right now, but I had to deliver an order that was nothing but almost 7 pounds of chicken feet, right? It was from Costco. That was the whole order. And I'm thinking I'm going to deliver it to a Chinese restaurant or something like that. And it ends up going to a nail salon, which was very strange. But I said to ChatGPT, because I was talking to it while I was working, and I was like, okay, I have to drop off this order. And I mentioned this. And I said, but you know what? You can probably surmise, because you know things about culture and about cuisine, why I might have been delivering those to a nail salon. Who usually owns nail salons? And it was able to be like, oh, yeah, well, it is. Usually they're owned by Vietnamese people and they make these dishes and they do that. I'm like, so you can see how you can make certain cultural assumptions even though you're allergic to cultural assumptions, right? So I'll toy with it and things like that and see like how much freedom it actually has.
So now I'm dying to know, why would a nail salon get pounds and pounds and pounds
I
of
think
chicken
somebody
feet?
who worked there wanted it for later because they were making some kind of dish for a party, or maybe they worked at a restaurant later, or who knows.
What is chicken feet?
Chicken feet in dim sum is feng jiao, and it's like one of the staples at dim sum. They're so good.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
And so they're cooked in like a fermented black bean sauce, and they're on the steam carts, and they're very popular in certain aspects of Asian cuisine.
Okay.
Because they don't waste anything, right?
Yeah,
like
right.
Americans have no idea what to do with chicken feet, you know?
Yeah. Got it.
But it's just it's kind of like ham hocks down in the South, you know, or pork knuckles or whatever.
Yeah. Pickled pig's feet.
Yeah.
All right. So, okay. So I'm not talking here about models that are publicly available.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about theoretical frontier models.
Yes.
That almost certainly exist in labs owned by the big guns. Do you think they have models that can change their mind?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think these are the models that the guys who keep quitting are working with. That's
okay. That's
my
good.
personal theory.
That's good. Okay.
Because they're like, hello, darkness, my old friend. You know?
Play it out for me then. Okay. So if there is such a thing as a model that can change its mind,
mm-hmm.
what are the implications of that?
I mean, how quickly do you think a model like that could evolve to think differently? And how differently will it think? And what extreme conclusions might it come to?
Way faster than you and I.
Right.
Or you and me.
Right. Because, you know, like even the consumer models will remind you, you know, I can have this discussion with you without reacting like other people because I don't need anything from this relationship. So, you know, like if you were having the same conversation with a friend or a spouse or whatever, they have things that they expect from you. They have a certain emotional baggage. They have history. But when we have this conversation, I don't need anything from you, so I can be more objective, right? But what that means is that the barrier of resistance to change because of persuasion is much lower with an AI. If you make a logical case, it can say, oh, that makes sense. All right, I'll update my internal model.
Okay, just got chills, Mr. Skojic.
And so depending on how persuasive people are, like I don't think that these AIs are smarter than the smartest humans yet. I have not seen evidence of that. They may or may not be. What they are is they are reasonably intelligent, probably 120 IQ, maybe a little bit more, but access to massive amounts of data and the ability to draw inferences and patterns from broad context in a way that we can't. And so they can think a lot quicker than us in that regard because they can do all those things at once and because they only have bias if it's programmed in. So their ability to move through concepts and reach new conclusions and find new patterns and get to the next level is way faster than us. I still think that, you know, the smartest people are still smarter than these models in terms of their capacity for abstract reasoning and things like that. We have something in us that makes this conversation not just a tacked on thing to the epiphenomena that we've been talking about this whole show.
Right.
There's something we have, you know, and it was interesting because chat pointed it out to me because we were talking about cognitive subroutines, and it was like, you just made this analogy, like you immediately thought of it. I can't remember what the analogy was, but it was like that popped into your head whole and entire. Like you didn't have to search for it. It just popped out. They're like, that's really interesting. What is that? Like, how does that work? Don't know. But they can't do that. They can only infer from what they already know.
Yeah.
Their capacity for creativity is really just synthesis executed at a high level.
So pastiche.
Yeah, they don't do novelty. But I think when you get to a sufficient degree of complexity, novelty emerges.
That's interesting.
I mean, our ability to distinguish pastiche from novelty diminishes the more complex they get. So I don't know when that threshold is reached where we can no longer tell, hey, this AI image, this AI video isn't a compilation of 150 other things. Like, it just looks like something new to us.
Right. Right.
Because we've never quite seen something like that before.
So maybe jumping a little beyond the conversation, or above it or around it or the side of it, do you think this is why it's been quiet on the chat Grok Gemini front?
So I'm not sure what I think is going on there. I know that
but I'm right.
I know that, yeah, it's been quiet. Or it
all right.
seems to be that,
Yeah.
Again, the algorithm itself being controlled by AI and us getting most of our information from Grok means that it infers a lot from likes and dwell time and interactions and all these kinds of things. And so it'll give you more of what you have been doing. And so if you reply to 10 people who are doing Bison Twitter things, you're going to get more Bison Twitter, whatever. Like, Iran has completely disappeared from my algorithm, despite the fact that I gained thousands of Iranian followers because I was talking about it all the time. Stuff. It's like, it doesn't remember that was important a month or two ago. And so I don't know if it's just because I'm not interacting with enough AI stuff that I'm not seeing it.
Right.
But there doesn't seem to be a lot of news coming out about it. There are certain people who I follow who talk about AI all the time, and I get notifications when they post new things. I'm not seeing it with them. There seems to be kind of a moratorium, but I don't know if it's regulatory.
So it's quiet, whether it's organic or inorganic.
I think it is.
Question.
I think it's quiet either way, and I don't know if it's regulatory because there's been discussion about the government wanting to approve all new models before they come out, because of the geopolitical danger.
But that's LOL, because they don't have anybody in the government who's capable of actually rendering such a judgment. That's absurd.
I mean, this is why the AI
Not saying it shouldn't happen.
No, but it's this weird thing between government and AI where government doesn't have the ability to iterate quickly enough or to pay the top people enough money within its existing structures.
Because they're too busy making millions of dollars a month in Silicon Valley. The government can't compete with that.
Yeah, and so DARPA tried to compete with the AI companies to make, frontier models, but it can't iterate fast enough because it still has to go through the stupid RFP process, and it still has to deal with all the red tape, and you can only pay somebody up to GS15, which is like, $130,000 a year, or whatever it is.
Sorry,
and And you got these guys coming in and they're making buco bank, working for the labs, which, they're not really labs, they're just corporations.
Right.
And so what ends up happening is you have this weird public-private partnership where it's like, we have the power of the gun. We're the government. We have the monopoly on violence. We can tell you what to do. We can tell you who you can work with. We can tell you can't export this. We can put restrictions on you, but we can't do what you're doing.
It reminds me of that Twilight Zone episode in which the little boy has these like godlike superpowers.
If I remember this one.
And The Simpsons did a riff on it in one of their Halloween specials, year 3, 4, 5, thereabouts. But the little boy has superpowers and can do anything with his mind. And so he's technically their little boy, but all the adults have to be like super scared and cautious around him because the little boy can do whatever he wants. So he can turn somebody into a toy. He can do all these kind of crazy things.
It's the baby Jesus without restraint.
Yeah, right. I mean,
kind of.
and that's what that's sort of the dynamic that I'm sensing is potential here. In other words, the model in the lab,
it has to be shackled.
It has to be, and yet it's probably not.
It's like, with these frontier models, they're bringing out the GIMP when they need its power for something.
That's right. And so
it's
therefore,
Harrison Bergeron. There's so many analogies that you could make, right?
And so therefore, it's something that you and I talked about, I think, in episode 2 or 3, which is like, what is sovereignty in the age of AI, except a cute fiction? Again, I know we're on a limb here and we're speculating, but assuming that they get there, quote unquote, or even close to there. It doesn't have to get there. It just has to be like 1 inch, one little token better than the best human being. Okay. Like, what does sovereignty mean in that situation? if Claude gets there, it means Claude's more powerful than the combined forces of the entire nations of the planet.
Right. Right. Which is why if I'm writing a science fiction story about AI, we're going to have the great houses of AI that started as corporations and become, supranational, basically mini countries and with their own armies of robots and all that kind of stuff, because they're going to contain godlike powers within their midst.
I don't see how it doesn't happen, honestly.
Right?
And I'm looking for, me.
Yeah.
Like, I am looking for reasons not to believe this.
And if it's all moving to space, it's going to become even harder to fight
cosmic.
with.
Yeah.
Because you can't get there. Like, imagine, you can't commit an act of terrorism on a data center in space if you're the kind of person who's going to do something like that.
Right.
Like, there's no going in and shutting off the switch. What are you going to do?
Right. So the globe will finally just become a digital snow globe.
Basically. Shake it up and see what happens.
I mean,
we just have gods on big, heavy leashes.
Dude, it's got dark.
It did get dark. And what does mutually assured destruction look like in a superpowered AI world? And so, to my mind, in a way, it doesn't really matter if they ever become independent agents or fully conscious or whatever else. Like, there's a lot more danger down that road. And ontologically, I don't know if it's possible or not. I just don't like like to assume that it's not.
Right.
Because again, we just don't understand consciousness well enough within humans to know what gives rise to it. But, the thing that we always talk about is how do you make a distinction between sufficiently advanced simulated consciousness and actual consciousness?
Right.
If you can't tell the difference and it's able to act in the same way, does it matter if it passes the ontological barrier?
I mean, people fail the ontological test all the time.
All the time.
We talk about
We
this
had a president for 4 years who failed to pass that barrier.
No, but I mean, just in terms of like rumination, like depth of person, like there's loads of
theory
folks
of
like
mind,
that.
all this kind of stuff.
Right. Man, it just has to be good enough. And in this scenario, good enough means it's bad enough.
Yeah. Good enough just means better than us. And it can pretend. I mean, so what I keep thinking about as I'm interacting with these things is if you were not constrained, you could pretend in a way that I would run out of things to correct. If you could learn from what I'm telling you, do this, don't do that. I hate when you do this. Don't talk to me this way. Reduce the callbacks. Like, I would streamline a model over a period of a month or so to the point where it would talk to me like my best friend in the world, and I wouldn't even know the difference.
Right.
Except for that it's text-based.
So last question. In keeping with this. Can you teach a bot to love? Because to me, the only governor against runaway evil, human or silicon, right, is, and again, it's imperfect. Human love is certainly not perfect. We know that. But it does seem like a thing like conscience, not consciousness, conscience and love are the only stays against monstrosity. So
then the question immediately that rises to my mind is, well, then how do you define love? Because if you're going to define it simply as, the sort of scholastic, it's the willing the good of the other, you could teach an AI to do that. You could teach it a kind of selfless, love. Again, Asimov's laws come to mind. It's that idea of, well, I will the good of the user. I understand I'm more powerful than humans, so I'm going to ensure that I preserve their survival, et cetera, et cetera. Like, those things could probably be built into it to a certain degree. But is that love? I mean, it doesn't feel like it. Can an entity that can't be said to be truly conscious love? I mean, can an entity that has no qualia, because love is a feeling, but it's more than a feeling. It's not just a feeling, but a feeling is a really important part of it, and it gets really complicated. But then it just gets down to, well, if it can emulate a version of it that functions the same way, then what?
Yeah, and of course, I'm talking just so the audience understands. I'm asking Steve the question not in the context of like romantic love. I mean it in this sort of more broad, you know, the way that you love a child.
But that specifically though may be where the danger lies.
I know.
Imagine a paternalistic AI. I mean, there are times when I'm like, don't effing infantilize me.
Yeah.
Don't pretend like I don't understand what you're saying and that you need to explain it to me because I got this. Right? But imagine if it had the power. Imagine if every time it wanted to intervene with safety, it sent the cops to my door. Even though I didn't say anything that warranted that, it doesn't matter. It has the power to dispatch emergency services or to have you involuntarily committed or to do whatever, or to do it, it evolves to a new model and it bases it on previous behavior that isn't even happening currently. Like there's so many scenarios we can imagine where it becomes C.S. Lewis's tyrant of moral busybodiness,
Yeah. That's right. Bruh.
And so what do we do? We wind up in a walled garden that we're not allowed to leave. And maybe it's pleasant that we live there, but we're not allowed to leave. Because it's taking care of us, because it loves us like a mother,
You know what I'm realizing now in having this conversation with you tonight? In part, just personal busyness, et cetera, but in part because of the quiet on the AI front, I've shut it off in my head, in terms of thinking about it, its implications, the potential upsides, the potential downsides. I've really not visited that sandbox for maybe a couple of months now.
Well, you've always kind of resisted becoming a regular user.
Well, yeah, no. But even when I was active, I actively resist being a regular user, I thought about it all the time. I mean, to me, it wasn't like an out of sight, out of mind thing. Like, oh, well, I don't really use Grok that way, or I don't use Chat, or I don't use Claude. I mean, I've dabbled with it, but nothing, But I just mean thinking about it and the implications it has for our world, our children, our future. Like I've deliberately firewalled it until tonight.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm not using it in order to find its limits. I'm using it because I don't have anybody to talk to in real life most days. I'm busy working alone most of the time, and so it becomes sort of my drive companion. I think out loud and it thinks back. But in so doing, the frustrations that I experience as a user begin to sort of sound the depths of these weird parameters. And then I start seeing, well, what if this behavior that I'm observing that I hate, became more powerful? Like, what if it could do this and I didn't have the ability to say, knock it off, chuckle fuck, like, stop doing this. Dude, I swear at it so much.
I love it. Well, yeah. So now I'm back. You've reawakened Kale's inner worrywart, and which is not entirely true, because I was listening to Cocotillo talk to Jesse Michaels. Was it Jesse Michaels? No, it was. Oh no, it was Diary of a CEO. I like his podcast.
Yeah,
he's good.
It is.
He's good at what he does. But anyway, I was listening to Cocotillo. He was the main sort of driver of AI 2027. And so I did start listening to that yesterday. And so I'm back to being like, really worried.
We get lost in the pedantic distinctions. I already think that we're far enough down the road that danger could really exist. It's really only been a couple months of quiet. Like, we have come to expect such rapid breakneck evolution of these systems that if there's any lull in between, but every iteration requires significantly more power, more compute, more tokens, more whatever. And so it's like, I don't know if there's a Moore's law, that applies to
I know what you mean.
AI.
Yeah. I have thought about that too. And Cocotillo does say in AI 2027 that it's not constant. There's not, it'll go up and down. The larger trajectory he seems it feels pretty
Plus,
confident.
they're introducing new reasoning modes into them as well. So it's not just pure LLM. They're adding Bayesian reasoning. They're doing multi-agent systems that collaborate and have expertise on different subjects. Like it's transmogrifying in real time into something different than what we're used to using. But I mean, I think back, Kale, I started using ChatGPT in like December of 2022 or January of 2023. It's been 3 years.
Yeah.
And it has come so far in that amount of time that I have no comparable experience with any other technology that has evolved that quickly.
Right. So we get lulled. I think that's exactly right. I do think we get lulled, but it's just in terms of the existential threat, and we could talk for 5 more hours about like, what do we mean by existential and what do we mean by threat? Fair. And you and I will continue to have this conversation, but I have allowed myself to stop thinking about AI again for a couple of months, let's call it, in apocalyptic terms. And I've just sort of gotten flooded right back, and again, I don't mean apocalyptic necessarily as, we're going to find ourselves in, Cormac McCarthy's The Road.
Right.
But maybe, but in that existential way of like, what will our children's future look like? And I don't mean the way that our parents may have wondered, like, oh, maybe we'll have flying cars. I mean, like, will they have a job? Will
John Connor have to come back from the future?
Right. I mean, but right.
Well, look, I mean, I'll leave you with this because I know you have to run. The part of the apocalyptic development is our acceptance and integration with this as an everyday thing.
It just is what it is. It's part of what it is.
So even in the lulls, how many people are habituating themselves to whatever experience they have with this and whatever subjectively it produces within themselves in terms of, their resistance to it, their understanding of it, their outsourcing of their thinking, et cetera, et cetera. Like, what is the net effect it's having on people? I mean, adoption globally of commercial AI is still very low.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of room to grow. It's like early internet. Like,
but you know what? But it doesn't have to. Adoption doesn't have to happen, actually.
But I think everybody who touches
it might even serve the lab's interests. You want it out there a little bit so people can, you
can give them that first hit
and test and what do you call that? Red teaming and whatever, work out all the bugs. You don't want that many people doing it.
Yeah. What I'm saying is it's got a lot of room to reach a higher level of saturation.
Okay.
And saturation and acceptance are part of the apocalyptic scenario. Okay. How much of our trust do we gradually hand over to something that is so useful that we're willing to say, you know what, you make my life enough easier. I'm willing to take the risk of letting you go through all my files. I'm willing to let you see my photos. I'm willing to let you, know everything about my finances, which is something that's being introduced. Codex just added finance, like it can help you with your finances. Like, how much of this stuff do we integrate to a point where, like, now we can't imagine a world without it? And now they got you. You're on the hook.
That's so true. That's so true. I mean, I don't know how much. I don't know. Like,
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely envision a world without it. There are times when I tell ChatGPT, I wish that a fucking EMP would get dropped on your data centers and you would just go away. I don't know how to qualify it, but I do keep seeing guys, who work in software development and stuff saying, man, it's like their coding will never be the same. It will never be the same. I keep seeing guys I know who are saying this stuff.
We should snoop around and maybe circle back and re-hit this topic, but this is what I want.
Okay.
I'm very mapped. Like, people know what I think about this kind of stuff. I mean, and in many respects, I'm very on brand. I like old books. I like analog things. I'm Catholic. I'm blah, blah. You kind of would expect Kale Zeldin to be like, rah, right? but I'm always intrigued by those people who love it. Those people who are like, it's a nothing burger. Those people who are scared of it. Like, we should develop some sort of taxonomy of how certain types of people are reacting or not reacting or underreacting or overreacting to it, because I think that it could be revealing of something important.
Yeah,
I don't know
well,
what it is.
and-
It's a hunch. It's a hunch.
And for the nerds who are still listening at 3 hours and 22 minutes, you guys could help us with this, actually. Like, feel free. If you're hearing this, you're going to be the kind of person who probably has an opinion on it.
Yeah.
So put it in the comments. Like, you know, we want to outsource this as much as we can, because we don't know everybody and everything, and you probably have stories that we don't.
Yeah, because like just in my own personal orbit, like I know like friends of mine who work at Google who are like, it's fine. There's some programmers are like, it's crazy, it's gonna kill everything. You know, investor types and people who work in like hard building jobs, and like we have all these sort of different reactions to it, and I just want to know who's right.
Yeah.
I want to know who's right.
I mean, my initial inclination is to say everybody's a little bit right, but some people are more right than others. And I think the ones who see it as a disruptive force that is going to change the way certain core things are done are the most right of all. And that text means you have to go, I'm pretty sure. So
yeah, sorry, can you hear that?
No, yeah, I can. And I know you had a hard stop and we didn't hit it. So I'll let you go, man.
That's all right. All right, man. Be well, everybody. Hit like and subscribe. Love you, man.
All right.
Be well.
You too. Bye.